Chapter 186. Great Cloud Imperial Capital. After leaving South City, Yi Xian boarded another cloud ship, and the destination of this cloud ship was Great Cloud Imperial Capital. On the cloud ship, a steward of Drunken Immortal Inn came in front of Yi Xian. The steward bowed deeply to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, Drunken Immortal Inn has investigated Steward Wu's matter. This person is the spy of Xueqi Academy in Drunken Immortal Inn. For causing trouble to young Master Yi, I apologize to young Master Yi on behalf of Drunken Immortal Inn." Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's fine." The steward bowed again. "My Drunken Immortal Inn has sent a spy to Great Cloud Imperial Capital. If there is any movement in Great Cloud Imperial Capital, my Drunken Immortal Inn will immediately inform young Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "Thank you for your trouble." The steward said, "If young Master Yi has any instructions, just call me at any time." After saying that, he turned and left. Soon, two maids came up behind Yi Xian with two fruit trays in their hands. The two maids lowered their heads, their faces flushed. Yi Xian turned around, and when he saw the two maids, he suddenly froze. He knew them. These two maids were the same two maids he met on the cloud ship when he returned to Conglan Academy. At that time, these two maids were going to drug him. Yi Xian picked up a fruit plate and said with a smile, "There won't be any drug, right?" Hearing this, the two maids lowered their heads even more, and their faces became even redder. Seeing the two maids' shy appearance, Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. After a moment, the maid on the left suddenly plucked up her courage and looked at Yi Xian. Are you really Sword Master?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Of course. And, do you think I'm very handsome?" The maid sized up Yi Xian, covered her mouth and laughed. "I have never seen such a thick-skinned swordsman, you are the first." Yi Xian was speechless. The maid on the right suddenly pulled the maid on the left and said softly, "Tong Tong, don't talk nonsense." The maid named Tong Tong looked at Yi Xian and blinked. "You won't be angry, right?" Yi Xian deliberately put on a straight face. "What do you think?" Tong Tong grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. "You won't be angry. Because you are a good person. Dandan and I have heard of your deeds in Mizar City." As she spoke, she pulled the arm of the woman beside her called Dandan and said with a tender smile, "Last time, she was the one who wanted to drug you." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What drug?" Hearing this, the two women's faces instantly turned red. Especially the servant named Dandan. She covered her face in embarrassment. "Fine." Yi Xian was speechless. From the looks of these two little girls, they were definitely not good medicine. Sigh. Yi Xian let out a deep sigh. He was too handsome, and he had almost made many women commit crimes. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side and chuckled. "Let me tell you a secret. Dandan's dream is to marry a swordsman. Do you want to die?" Dandan suddenly hugged Tong Tong and kept tickling her. Soon, the two women were chasing each other on the cloud ship, laughing. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He turned to face the distance. A light breeze blew, warming him up. And at this moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The speed of the white light was small at first, but in the blink of an eye, it had increased dozens of times. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He turned around abruptly. "Be careful." As his voice fell, his figure trembled and he appeared in front of Tong Tong, who was closest to him. He blocked Tong Tong with one hand and was about to catch Dandan, who was still a few feet away from him. Boom! A beam of light that was hundreds of feet long suddenly hit the cloud ship. In an instant, the entire cloud ship collapsed with a loud bang, and countless fragments flew in all directions. In the sky, Yi Xian was falling rapidly with the two women in his arms. Behind him was his goodwill sword intent, and this goodwill sword intent was constantly being destroyed. Every time it was destroyed, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Soon, just as he was about to fall to the ground, a sword suddenly stopped him. The sword withstood most of the falling force. Just like that, Yi Xian slowly landed on the ground with the two women in his arms. Yi Xian hurriedly put the two women in his arms on the ground. When he saw the two women's condition, his expression instantly sank. Tong Tong was fine because he had protected her at the first moment, so she was not seriously injured. As for Dandan, Dandan was the first to suffer the impact of the beam of light. The meridians and organs in her body were all ruptured. Yi Xian hurriedly took out a golden sour pill and fed it to Dan Dan. However, blood kept flowing from her mouth. Dan Dan looked at Yi Xian. She slowly raised her hands and hugged Yi Xian's cheeks. Tears kept flowing from her eyes. I don't want to die. Yi Xian hurriedly took out a few more pills and fed them to Dan Dan. However, it was still useless. Blood kept flowing from the corner of her mouth, and the vitality in her body was also rapidly disappearing. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's tears instantly flowed. I'm sorry. Dan Dan gently wiped the tears from Yi Xian's cheeks with both hands. Are you crying for me? Yi Xian held Dan Dan's hands tightly and said painfully, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Dan Dan grinned, and this grin caused more blood to flow out. She looked at Yi Xian. Suddenly, she smiled. Although I can't marry a swordsman, to be able to die in the arms of a swordsman. Moreover, in the arms of our Qingzhou's most powerful swordsman, At this point, more blood gushed out of her mouth. At the same time, her breath was also getting weaker. At this time, she gently stroked Yi Xian's cheeks. Her eyes began to slowly close. If only I could live, that would be great. Yi Xian hugged Dan Dan tightly. His whole body was trembling. Sensing that Dan Dan's breath was getting weaker, he suddenly raised his head and roared. At this moment, countless white mist suddenly gushed out of his body. Soon, all the white mist poured into Dan Dan's body. The substantial goodwill sword essence. More and more goodwill sword essence flowed into Dan Dan's body. Soon, her broken meridians and organs were tightly wrapped by the goodwill sword essence. At this time, an old man suddenly landed beside Yi Xian. The old man quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and said, State Scholar Yi, old man, 6th floor master of Drunken Immortal Inn, can you? Yi Xian hurriedly said, Look at her. Hurry up. The 6th floor master looked at Dan Dan in Yi Xian's arms. He placed his right hand on Dan Dan's pulse. After a moment, he frowned deeply. Although her organs are protected by State Scholar Ye's sword essence, but how? Yi Xian directly interrupted the 6th floor master's words. The 6th floor master said in a deep voice, Heart Shield Pill. This pill can protect her heart and meridians. It can also slowly heal her. However, one pill is probably not enough. She needs to take it for a long time. This Heart Shield pill costs about 60 million gold coins. Yi Xian said, I will pay for it. Give it to me immediately. The 6th floor master glanced at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment and said, Young Master Yi, she is just a maidservant. You? Yi Xian suddenly turned to the 6th floor master and shouted angrily, Is a maidservant's life so worthless? The 6th floor master did not say anything else. He turned and left. In less than a quarter of an hour, he returned in front of Yi Xian. He handed a white jade bottle to Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and poured out a pill for Dan Dan to consume. As soon as the Heart Shield pill entered her body, a strange energy instantly spread to her limbs and bones. Soon, Dan Dan's aura gradually stabilized. Sensing this, Yi Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, the 6th floor master said, Young Master Yi, the previous matter has been investigated. The ones who attacked the cloud ship were Xueqi Academy and Dark World. That light beam was fired by the cloud-piercing cannon. The cloud-piercing cannon is comparable to a true-grade spiritual artifact. It is specially used to deal with air attacks. Their actions are to prevent you from entering the imperial capital. And now, you cannot ride the cloud ship. Xueqi Academy. Dark World. Yi Xian's face was incomparably gloomy. To be precise, it was ferocious. After a moment, Yi Xian faced the 6th floor master and said, If I don't ride the cloud ship, how long will it take to reach the imperial capital? The 6th floor master pondered for a moment and said, Even if I ride the fastest black flame horse, I'm afraid it will take at least half a month. Half a month? Yi Xian shook his head. Too slow. Is there any other way? The 6th floor master thought for a moment and shook his head. The fastest way is to ride the black flame horse. Even with the black flame horse, you might not be able to reach the imperial capital in half a month. That's because the journey to the imperial capital is too long. Even the black flame horse can't pass through some remote areas. At this point, he hesitated for a moment and said, You can stay here for now. We can discuss this further. Discuss further? Yi Xian shook his head. They are after my life. What's the point of discussing? The sixth floor master sighed. My friend, even if you want to ride the Black Flame Horse, you won't be able to because the Black Flame Horse only exists in the Great Cloud Empire. You! At this moment, he suddenly turned to look at a place not far away. There was a horse galloping towards him. There was a patch of black flame under its feet. Black Flame Horse. Soon, the Black Flame Horse arrived beside Yi Xian and stopped there quietly. Seeing this, the sixth floor master's face sank. Yi Xian remained silent for a long time. Finally, he faced the sixth floor master. Take care of them. I will pay for the elixirs they consume. After saying that, he flicked his finger and a golden card landed in front of the sixth floor master. Yi Xian faced Tong Tong and Dandan. Take care of yourself. Live well. After saying that, he turned to leave. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian turned his head. Tong Tong stared at Yi Xian. We are just lowly maidservants. You? Yi Xian shook his head. There is no difference in life. Take care of yourself. After saying that, he leaped onto the Black Flame Horse. Soon, he disappeared from the sight of Tong Tong and the sixth floor master. Looking at Yi Xian, Tong Tong was a little dazed. Great Cloud Empire, Imperial Palace. A woman sat in front of the Golden Dragon Palace. She lowered her head and counted the ants in front of her. 1, 2, 3, 4. Io, you little fellows, don't move. Don't move. Don't. I'm so angry. I counted wrong again. After saying that, she snorted heavily and started counting again. 1, 2. At this moment, an armored woman walked to the woman's side. Your Majesty, Karaki College and Dark World are attacking again. After a while, the woman suddenly raised her head and looked at the armored woman. He is willing to spend hundreds of millions to save those two maidservants? The armored woman nodded. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. Interesting. The armored woman said again. The Black Flame Cavalry and experts from various aristocratic families have gone to stop them. Your Majesty. The woman waved her hand. Don't bother me. I want to count the ants here. 1, 2, 3. The armored woman. P.S. There are some changes in the recent updates. Sorry. Everyone. Clasped fist. Chapter 187. Karaki Academy. At this moment, all the instructors and elders of Karaki Academy were gathered within the hall. There were a total of 9 Dharma realm experts within the hall. Mu Qingxian was seated at the seat of the host. Mu Qingxian glanced at them. With Yi Xian's current speed, he'll be able to arrive at the imperial capital in less than half a month. At that time, so long as the Dharma realm doesn't act, then no one in the imperial capital will be able to stop him. But if he comes to our academy, then we can only watch as he slaughters the students of our academy. The Dharma realm experts couldn't act. The expressions of everyone here instantly turned gloomy. They wanted to act, but that sword immortal was like a sword that hung above their heads, so they didn't dare act rashly at all. Li Mu from the Central Divine Prefecture was the best example. He was an expert at the law control realm. However, he'd still died, and he died in such a humiliating manner. There was no solution. This was a situation that was impossible to resolve. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly stepped forward. It's clearly impossible to seek peace in such a situation. Since we can't do that, then we can only fight to the death. As he spoke, he gazed at Mu Qingxian. Has the headquarters replied? The headquarters. Everyone here gazed at Mu Qingxian when they heard this. Presently, their only hope was the headquarters of Karaki Academy. Mu Qingxian nodded. The headquarters needs some time. The old man asked, how long? Mu Qingxian spoke in a low voice, at least a month. The old man frowned. Why is it taking so long? It only takes a few days for the Central Divine Prefecture to travel to Pine Prefecture through teleportation formations. Why is it taking so long? Mu Qingxian glanced at the old man. Do you think anyone in the younger generation of the headquarters can kill Yi Xian? The surroundings instantly fell silent when they heard this. At this moment, they noticed to their astonishment that not to mention Great Cloud Realm's Karaki Academy, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. Even if it was the headquarters of the Central Divine Prefecture, no one in the younger generation could stop Yi Xian. Besides the monstrous geniuses in the top 10 of the monstrous genius rankings, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. The Sword Master. Even in the Central Divine Continent, a sword master who wasn't even 20 years old would be a top-notch genius. In the hall, the old man sighed softly. This person is unstoppable. Li Xuanzong, the dean of the state of Zhang's Karaki Academy, was truly foolish back then. From the very beginning until now, it would be a lie if Karaki Academy said he didn't regret it. Because the school that Yi Xian wanted to join the most was Karaki Academy. If Yi Xian had joined Karaki Academy, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, "The matter is already over, there's no need to mention it again. The headquarters has already asked for help from another place. It can be said that the ones who want Yi Xian dead are not only my Karaki Academy and the Dark World. There is another faction that has already contacted my Karaki Academy. We only need to stop Yi Xian from entering the imperial capital. At the very least, we can't let him enter the imperial capital within a month." Below, the old man said in a deep voice, "This person obtained a flaming horse, so he must have received help from someone in the dark. Could it be the Great Cloud Empire? After all, only the Great Cloud Empire has flaming horses." Mu Qingxian shook his head. The Great Cloud Empire also has a grudge with Yi Xian, so they have no reason to help Yi Xian. Moreover, if the Great Cloud Empire wants to unify Azure Province, they must get rid of Yi Xian. Therefore, this matter is definitely not the work of the Great Cloud Empire. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and a cold light flashed in his eyes. This matter might be the work of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Drunken Immortal Inn. Currently, everyone in the world knows that the Drunken Immortal Inn has been supporting Yi Xian. At this moment, the space in front of Mu Qingxian suddenly trembled. After about 15 minutes, Mu Qingxian looked at the people below and said with some excitement, "This time, Yi Xian will definitely die. Pass down the order. Do everything possible to stop Yi Xian from entering the imperial capital and wait for reinforcements." "Yes." The people in the hall replied in unison and then left. Country of Jiang. Azure Wave Academy. In front of the Azure Wave Palace, Missouri Yuan sat in front of the stone steps, and beside him was Feng Lan. Mo Yuan looked at the letter in his hand, and after a long time, the letter in his hand burned. "What's wrong?" Feng Lan asked. Mo Yuan said softly, "He has already entered the Great Cloud Realm, and Karaki Academy and Dark World are doing their best to stop him from entering the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. I'm afraid his situation is not too good." Feng Lan said solemnly, "Take action?" Mo Yuan shook his head. "If the Confucian sect takes action, although we can solve his current predicament, it will bring him more trouble. Inform little Lu to be ready to let that Dao soldier enter the Great Cloud Realm at any time." Feng Lan said solemnly, "Although that Dao soldier has cultivated the military heart sutra, it has only been trained for a short time, and its combat power is probably insufficient." Mo Yuan smiled. "If it doesn't experience battles, this Dao soldier will never be able to grow." Feng Lan thought about it and then nodded. "That's true." After saying that, he got up and left. Mo Yuan looked up at the sky and said softly, "Karaki Academy, I advise you to be kind." In the vast mountain range, Yi Xian rode the black flame horse and galloped all the way. It has to be said that the black flame horse was really fast. If it was an ordinary person, they would not be able to withstand the speed of the black flame horse, because it was too fast. On the back of the horse, Yi Xian was expressionless. Behind him, there was a sword box, and inside the sword box, there were 7 swords. Half an hour later, Yi Xian arrived at an ancient city. Pingyang City. The Great Cloud Realm was not like the country of Jiang. The Great Cloud Realm was too big, and if he kept going around, let alone half a month, he would not be able to reach the Great Cloud Imperial Capital in 2 months. After entering Pingyang City, Yi Xian did not stop and went straight to the Imperial Capital. However, when he arrived at the city gate, the gate was tightly shut. More than 50 men in black appeared on the city wall. These men in black all held longbows in their hands, and the arrows were already knocked on the bowstrings. Apart from them, several thousand guards suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian, holding long spears in their hands. Obviously, there was an ambush here. In front of the city wall, an old man suddenly appeared and stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, This is not the country of Jiang. You can't come and go as you please. Think. At this moment, the sword box on Yi Xian's back suddenly trembled slightly, and in the next moment, 7 swords suddenly soared into the sky. Seeing this scene, the old man's expression changed drastically. Release the arrows. On the city wall, the arrows in the hands of the 50 men in black had just flown out, and in the next moment, their heads flew off one after another. In less than 2 breaths of time, the heads of the 50 men on the city wall were all removed. Below, the 50 arrows were all blocked by Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword, because these arrows were not as fast as his sword. In fact, it should be said that there was no comparison at all. Soon, the 7 swords flew back into the sword box one after another, and behind Yi Xian, the soldiers were already stunned on the spot, and none of them dared to make a move. Holding the spirit elegant sword, Yi Xian pointed at the old man in front of the city gate. Can you stop them? As soon as he said that, the black flame horse under him leaped and charged toward the city gate. At the same time, a sword directly slashed at the city gate. Boom! The city gate suddenly collapsed, and Yi Xian left in a cloud of dust. Outside the city, Yi Xian suddenly stopped because there were nearly 1,000 cavalrymen hundreds of feet away from him. Great Cloud Cavalrymen. In front of the cavalrymen, the leader of the cavalrymen suddenly roared. Kill! As soon as he said that, 1,000 cavalrymen charged straight at Yi Xian. 1,000 cavalrymen was not a lot, but when they formed a formation and charged together, it was still very terrifying. Yi Xian was expressionless. He patted the black flame horse lightly with both legs and leaped into the air. When he landed on the ground, he tapped his right foot lightly and flew high into the air again. At the same time, 7 flying swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back. Chi 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 chi. Dozens of feet away, more than 30 cavalrymen fell to the ground almost at the same time. And that group of cavalrymen also drowned Yi Xian in an instant. There was a moment of silence. Among the cavalrymen, the sound of swords rang out. Then, 7 sword lights shot out from the group of cavalrymen. Wherever the sword lights passed, Great Cloud cavalrymen were directly cut in half at the waist. In front of the city gate, the old man stared at Yi Xian in the group of cavalrymen, his hands trembling. Yi Xian. Before this, he had only heard of Yi Xian's name and didn't have an accurate understanding of Yi Xian. But now he knew him. Sword Master. A sword master who was less than 20 years old had such terrifying strength. At this moment not far away, nearly 300 cavalrymen had fallen, and more were falling to the ground. No one could stop Yi Xian's sword. A quarter of an hour later, there were less than 500 cavalrymen left. Without the power to charge, the momentum and strength of these cavalrymen were also greatly reduced. Slaughter. Yi Xian was still slaughtering. An hour later, there were less than 100 cavalrymen left, and these 100 cavalrymen were already far away from Yi Xian. Corpses were everywhere around Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood among the countless corpses, holding the Lingxiu sword. A smear of blood slowly flowed down the blade of the Lingxiu sword. Yi Xian walked toward the 100 cavalrymen with the sword in his hand. Seeing this scene, the 100 cavalrymen's expressions changed drastically. At this moment, they were already afraid. Really afraid. In the beginning, they were not afraid when there were only 1,000 people. What were they afraid of when it was 1,000 against 1? But now, in the blink of an eye, there were only 100 of them left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sped up. Seeing this, the remaining 100 cavalrymen turned and ran, but Yi Xian clearly didn't want to let them go. 7 swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back, and the next moment, the heads of more than a dozen cavalrymen in the distance were directly sent flying. However, there were still some cavalrymen who had fled. Because these cavalrymen fled in different directions. In the distance, Yi Xian stood in front of a cavalryman who was still twitching. This cavalryman looked at Yi Xian in fear. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape at all. Because just now, both his legs had been chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian lowered his head and looked at his right hand. At this moment, he realized that his right hand had already lost all feeling. Numb. Numb from killing. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared a few dozen feet away from Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian, and his lips curled into a smile. You're very good at killing. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning. My Karaki College has hundreds of thousands of people in Qingzhou, And there are also Dark World and countless aristocratic families. Yi Xian, can you kill them all? At this point, his smile suddenly became somewhat sinister. Even if I'm tired, I'll tire you to death. Chapter 188. Tire himself to death? Yi Xian smiled. In fact, he knew that the best outcome for him now was to sue for peace with Xueqi College and Dark World. As long as he took the initiative to sue for peace, there was still a possibility of reconciliation. However, he would not sue for peace. Not even if he died. Not even if he took the initiative to sue for peace. Even if Xueqi College and Dark World came to sue for peace, he would not agree. Because old Ji was dead. Old Ji. He had never forgotten this old man. Back then, Xueqi College and Dark World joined hands to kill old Ji. As for old Ji, he could have left, but in order to protect Ji Onji and the other two, old Ji didn't take a single step back. He must take revenge for this. If he did not take revenge, he would not be a man. Moreover, he knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation. He would not believe Xueqi College and Dark World and Xueqi College would not believe him. As long as he gave these two forces a chance, they would give him a destructive blow. Not only against him but also against the people around him. Tire himself to death? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Even if I tire myself to death, I will kill you before I die. After saying that, he pointed the spirit-elegant sword at Mu Qingxian in the distance. Your Xueqi College has many people? No problem, I will kill as many as they come. After saying that, he turned and walked towards the black flame horse not far away. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared from Mu Qingxian's sight on the black flame horse. Mu Qingxian stood in the same place and did not speak for a long time. He knew that Xueqi College had met a person who was not afraid of death and trouble. He also knew what Xueqi Academy would face if Yi Xian arrived at the capital of the Great Cloud Empire before the reinforcements from the headquarters arrived. Disaster. Once Yi Xian entered the Great Cloud Imperial capital, it would be a disaster for Xueqi College. Because at that time, no one could stop Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian turned and left. Not long after Mu Qingxian left, an armored woman with a long sword at her waist came outside the city. The woman glanced at the corpses on the ground. All of them were killed with a single sword strike. In the same place, the armored woman remained silent for a long time. Then, she turned around and entered the city. She went directly to the city lord's mansion. An old man quickly came out to welcome her. This subordinate greets my lord. The armored woman glanced at the old man coldly. 1,000 cavalrymen and thousands of soldiers. Who gave you the order to send them out of the city to fight against Yi Xian? Hearing this, the old man broke out in a cold sweat. The armored woman continued, You receive the salary of my Great Cloud Empire, but work as a dog for Xueqi Academy. With that, she turned around and left. Behind her, the old man's head had unknowingly fallen to the ground. In the city lord's mansion, the armored woman took out a book. She lightly scribbled on it. Another tumor has been removed. With that, she turned around and left. 2 hours later, dozens of people entered the city and retook control of Pingyang City. Yi Xian was sitting by a river. The black flame horse was drinking water not far from him. Yi Xian took off his clothes. There were many bloodstains on his body. All of them were from the previous injuries. Without the Tao law, he didn't have the power of earth. It was impossible for him to come out unscathed in a battle with more than 1,000 cavalrymen. Yi Xian swallowed a golden sore pill and began to wash his body with the river water. Soon, the river water in front of him was dyed red. A quarter of an hour later, Yi Xian got up and was about to leave. At this moment, there was a sudden change. A person suddenly rushed out of the river in front of him. At the same time, a cold light pierced his throat. Yi Xian's face was calm. When the cold light was about half an inch away from his throat, it abruptly stopped. Because a sword had pierced the forehead of the person in front of him. Blood seeped out from the bottom of the river. Yi Xian opened his right palm and the sword flew into it. Yi Xian turned around and left. On the river surface behind him, a corpse floated down along with the river. Assassinate him? Ever since he entered the Great Cloud Realm, he, Yi Xian, had kept one eye open even when he slept. Moreover, when he was washing his body just now, he had already anticipated what would happen if there was someone at the bottom of the river. Now, no matter where he went, he was prepared for the worst. If someone wanted to assassinate him, they had to be faster than his sword. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared not far away. After Yi Xian left, an armored woman came to the riverside. The armored woman glanced at the corpse floating on the river. Killed with one sword. Clean and neat. After a moment of silence, the armored woman looked in the direction Yi Xian left. Is he going to kill his way to the imperial capital? 2 hours later. At night. The sky darkened and the entire land was pitch black. Yi Xian rode the black flame horse to a piece of flat land and lay on the black flame horse. Rest. He naturally had to rest. Without sleep, he would not be able to concentrate, which was even worse for him. Clearly, someone did not want him to rest. In the surrounding darkness, there was a sudden sound of fragmented footsteps. These footsteps were obviously made deliberately. But Yi Xian did not move. About an hour later, those fragmented footsteps were getting closer and closer to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian still did not move. Therefore those footsteps were getting closer. At this moment, a sword light flashed like a bolt of lightning in this dark night. Chi! A few dozen feet to the left of Yi Xian, a bloody head suddenly fell to the ground. The sword flew back to Yi Xian's side, while Yi Xian was still sleeping soundly. On the other side, 2 people were staring at Yi Xian on the horse in the distance. These 2 people were the mistress of the dark world and Mu Qingxian. The mistress of the dark world shook her head. We are assassins of the dark world. Even the Dao soldiers of the divine central continent cannot do anything to him. Mu Qingxian was silent. The mistress of the dark world said, if we can't stop this person with his current speed, I'm afraid it will not take half a month to reach the Great Cloud Imperial capital. Mu Qingxian turned to look at the mistress of the dark world. Which city is the closest to this place? The mistress of the dark world said in a deep voice, Longyu City. Mu Qingxian nodded. Let Longyu City be prepared. Even if we can't kill this person, we must delay him for a few hours. The mistress of the dark world shook her head. This city is not under our control. Hearing this, Mu Qingxian frowned. Then inform the Great Cloud Empire and let them pass the order. The mistress of the dark world said indifferently, by the time that King Kaoshan gives the order, this Yi Xian will have already passed by Longyu City. Mu Qingxuan's frown deepened. After a moment he said again, has there been a bounty? The mistress of the dark world glanced at Mu Qingxian. Now in the Azure province, who dares to come and kill Yi Xian? Who dares? Who can? Mu Qingxuan's face instantly darkened. At this moment, he realized to what extent Yi Xian's influence had reached. The youngest swordmaster in the Azure province. Just this title alone was enough to deter everyone. If it wasn't for the hatred between Karaki College and Yi Xian, no matter how high the reward was, Karaki College wouldn't come and target Yi Xian. Even Karaki College was like this, let alone others? Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. His eyes gradually became a little dazed. No one can stop him? Speaking until here. His dazed eyes suddenly became vicious. Since we can't target him, then target the people around him. Target the state of Jiang, target Songlan Academy, target his sister. These people can't be as invincible as him, right? Finishing, he looked at the mistress of the dark world. Let the dark world assassins and the elites of Karaki College take the cloud ship to the state of Jiang. For every step he takes, kill one person from the state of Jiang and Songlan Academy. Let's see if Yi Xian will return or not. Also, let the headquarters look for the whereabouts of his sister. Doesn't he care about his sister? If his sister falls into the hands of Karaki College, let's see if Yi Xian can still be so arrogant. P.S. Qing Wan. Chapter 189. Mu Qingxuan's voice was very loud and he also used Shen Qi. Not to mention Yi Xian, who was not far away. Everyone within a radius of 1 li could clearly hear his words. Obviously, he deliberately said this to Yi Xian. Against the state of Jiang. Against Azure Waves Academy. This was Mu Qingxuan's current goal. Because he discovered that he could no longer target Yi Xian. Whether it was experts or assassins, they could no longer stop Yi Xian's advance. The only way now was to target the state of Jiang and Azure Waves Academy and force Yi Xian to return. In the dark night, Mu Qingxian looked coldly at Yi Xian, who was in the distance. But Yi Xian still didn't move, and he even started snoring. Mu Qingxian did not say anything and turned to leave with the mistress of the dark world. An hour later, 5 cloud ships left the Great Cloud Imperial capital and headed for the state of Jiang. Inside these 5 cloud ships were the elites of Karaki Academy and Dark World. On the black flame horse, Yi Xian sat up and took out the sound transmission stone. About a quarter of an hour later, Lu Joga's voice came from the sound transmission stone. "Don't worry, if they come, they will not be able to return." Yi Xian put away the sound transmission stone and continued to sleep. In fact, he was not worried because the current Azure Waves Academy was no longer the Azure Waves Academy of the past. If the elites of Karaki Academy and Dark World went, they would not be able to gain any advantage. Unless the Dao soldiers of the headquarters went, the current Azure Waves Academy was not afraid of Karaki Academy and Dark World. At daybreak, Yi Xian set off. His goal was still the Great Cloud Imperial capital. The news of Yi Xian entering the Great Cloud realm also spread at this moment. Especially the matter of Yi Xian single-handedly annihilating 1,000 cavalries in Pingyang City. At first, it was still one person single-handedly against 1,000, but later on, it became one person single-handedly against 10,000, and later on, it became one person single-handedly against 100,000. In short, at this moment, Yi Xian was undoubtedly the most dazzling person in the Azure Prefecture. And everyone knew that Yi Xian's targets were the Karaki Academy and the Dark World, the 2 strongest forces in the Qingzhou region. At noon, Yi Xian arrived at an ancient city, Longshe City. On the city wall, a middle-aged man looked down at Yi Xian, who was entering the city, and said with a smile, "This person is Yi Xian?" A guard beside the middle-aged man nodded. "It should be true." The middle-aged man smiled faintly, as expected of the youngest sword master of my Qingzhou. Such bearing and courage are rare in the younger generation of my Qingzhou. The guard said in a deep voice, "City Lord, Karaki Academy sent a message, hoping that we can stop this person." "Stop him?" The middle-aged man's smile turned cold. "You want to use the lives of my Longstone City soldiers to stop me? Karaki Academy sure has a good plan." The guard said in a deep voice, "If we don't send troops to stop Yi Xian, I'm afraid Karaki Academy will." The middle-aged man glanced at the guard beside him. "Karaki Academy? I only listen to King Kaoshan's orders. Pass down the order. No one in the city is allowed to stop Yi Xian. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy." The guard bowed slightly. "Understood." After saying this, he turned and left. On the city wall, the middle-aged man turned around. At this moment, Yi Xian had already entered the city. Watching Yi Xian slowly disappear at the end of the street, the middle-aged man did not speak for a long time. Inside the city. When Yi Xian was about to leave the city, at the city gate stood an old man wearing a gray robe. The old man's right hand was hidden in his sleeve, while his left hand held 2 black iron balls. 10,000 Laws Realm. In the corner, the people of Longstone City frowned. This Karaki Academy was going to send out 10,000 Laws Realm? Opposite Yi Xian, the old man in gray robe stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, old man, Karaki Academy's teacher, this time, I came to tell you that my Karaki Academy and the elites of Dark World are about to enter Jiang country's territory. If you don't return, your Zhonglan Academy and the Jiang country's royal family will die without a burial place." "Yi, this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page." Xian expressionlessly rode the black flame horse and continued forward. Being ignored, the old man's face instantly sank. In his left palm, the 2 black iron balls made a cracking sound. He wanted to attack. He really wanted to attack. Because if he attacked, he was very confident that he could kill Yi Xian. After all, he was at 10,000 Laws Realm, while Yi Xian was only at Ethereal Opening Realm. Yi Xian and he were 2 whole realms apart. But the problem was, he did not dare. Li Mu was a law-controlling realm expert, but he still died in such a dubious way. Gradually, the old man's left hand loosened. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned to face the old man. "Want to hit me? Come on then. Come on." The old man's loosened left hand clenched again. He turned to stare at Yi Xian, his whole face slightly distorted. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black flame horse. He directly walked in front of the old man, then pointed at himself. "Come, hit me." In the corner, the Longshe City Lord's mouth slightly twitched. This Yi Xian. And in front of Yi Xian, the old man's hands were already slightly trembling. This was a sign that he was extremely angry. Seeing that the old man did not make a move, Yi Xian's mouth curled into a sneer. He also did not make a move. He turned around and mounted the black flame horse. He quickly disappeared not far away. In the same place, the old man suddenly fiercely slammed his palm on the ground. Bang! The entire ground instantly exploded, forming a huge crater. The old man's face was terrifyingly gloomy. This was the first time he was provoked by a nether passage realm ant like this, and he could not make a move. Aggrieved. He had never been so aggrieved before. At that moment, he really wanted to make a move. But he still forcefully endured it. Because if he made a move, he would just be throwing his life away. Moreover, the celebrity Yi Xian was deliberately provoking him. Even an expert like Li Mu could not fight back in front of that sword immortal, let alone him. After a moment, the old man deeply sighed, turned around and left. Outside the city, Yi Xian rode the black flame horse forward. Actually, he had hoped that the old man would make a move, because he wanted to see how far his current strength was from the Dharma realm. There was definitely a gap. Even though he was now a sword master, holding a true level sword and sword sheath, he was very clear that there was still a gap between him and the Dharma realm. After all, he was currently only at the Nether Passage realm. And he wanted to know how big the gap was. He did not have a clear idea of his current strength. Few people under the Dharma realm could block his sword. But what about the Dharma realm? Simply put, he really wanted to fight with the Dharma realm. The reason why he did not take the initiative to make a move was because he did not want to waste time. His current goal was the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. After leaving the city, Yi Xian sped up. In the next 2 days, Yi Xian did not encounter any trouble, and everything went smoothly. Therefore, he passed through 3 more cities, getting closer and closer to the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. However, the cloud ships of Xueqi College and Dark World had also entered the territory of Jiang Country. Outside the Jiang Country's imperial capital, 3 cloud ships slowly descended, and soon, nearly 100 people disembarked from the cloud ships, including more than 30 black-clothed people. These black-clothed people had just disembarked and were about to conceal themselves. Suddenly, more than 30 arrows shot over from an unknown place. Seeing this scene, the faces of the students of Xueqi College and the black-clothed people changed greatly, and they retreated rapidly. However, it was still a little too late, and more than a dozen people were directly pierced by the arrows and fell to the ground. At the same time, more than 70 cavalrymen suddenly rushed out of the city. When they saw these 70 people, the faces of the students of Xueqi College changed greatly. Black Flame Cavalrymen. Because these 70 people were exactly the same as the legendary Black Flame Cavalrymen. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Exactly the same. Black Flame Cavalrymen? The students of Xueqi College and the assassins of Dark World were dumbfounded. At this moment, the 70 cavalrymen were getting closer and closer to them, and the momentum of their charge was simply earth-shattering. Some of the students of Xueqi College recovered from their shock and roared furiously, "Meet the enemy! Meet the enemy!" As soon as the voice resounded, the 70 cavalrymen had already charged over. In an instant, miserable shrieks resounded in the battlefield. On the distant city wall, there were tens of thousands of soldiers waiting in formation. Presently, Songlan College's status in Jiang Country was extremely high, and it was also respected by countless people. No one would agree to touch Songlan College. On the city wall, Lu Jioga sat in a wheelchair, and beside her were Mo Yuan and Feng Lan. All of them were overlooking the battlefield below. At this moment, more than half of the so-called elites of Xueqi College had died, crushing. The 70 cavalrymen had completely crushed the students of Xueqi College. On the city wall, Mo Yuan smiled faintly. "These Dao soldiers are extremely effective." Lu Jioga chuckled lightly. Countless gold coins piled up. Speaking until here, she seemed to have thought of something, and she suddenly raised her head to look at the sky above the cloud ship. There was an old man hovering there. This person was the elder of Xueqi College who led the team this time. Looking at the battlefield below, the old man clenched his fists, and his expression was extremely ugly. He had never expected that Songlan College actually had Black Flame Cavalrymen. Naturally, this wasn't the Black Flame Cavalrymen of Great Cloud Empire. Obviously, it was a new cavalry unit that Songlan College had established after obtaining that batch of cavalry equipment. And the combat strength of this cavalry unit was so terrifying. If this continued, all the students of Karaki College below would be killed. Thinking of this, the old man slightly raised his right hand, and just when he was about to attack, a black-robed old man suddenly appeared in front of him. Fifth floor master of Drunken Immortal Inn. Fifth floor master looked at the old man without saying a word, but his aura had already locked onto the old man. The old man looked at fifth floor master. Your Drunken Immortal Inn is really going to... Fifth floor master waved his hand. Don't talk too much. If you attack, you will die here today. Hearing that, the old man's expression turned extremely ugly. At this moment, all the students of Karaki College below were killed. As for the assassins of Dark World, they had already escaped because they couldn't attack at all. The defensive strength of the armor that these 70 people wore was too terrifying. At this moment, a Dao soldier of Tsonglan College suddenly took off his helmet, revealing a delicate and pretty face of a woman. Jian Chu-Chu. Looking at the corpses on the battlefield, Jian Chu-Chu said excitedly, "Clean up the battlefield." As she spoke, she pointed at the 3 cloud ships that had stopped in the distance with her umbrella sword. "Hurry up and occupy them. These are our, everyone, Great Cloud Realm." On this day, Yi Xian arrived at another city. Just when he was about to enter the city, a man blocked his way. The man held a spear in his hand, and judging from his age, he seemed to be in his 20s. The man looked at Yi Xian with excitement in his eyes. Because as long as he held off Yi Xian for 2 hours, he would get hundreds of millions of gold coins. 2 hours. Hundreds of millions of gold coins. That was great news. The man was about to speak, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. The man's expression changed drastically, and the spear in his hand was about to attack, but at this moment, a sword was already at his forehead. The man's body stiffened. Yi Xian held the sword and pointed it forward lightly. "What do you want to say?" The man looked at Yi Xian for a long time, and in the end, his right hand that was holding the spear slowly loosened, and he said softly, "I am just passing by." End of this chapter. Chapter 190. Just passing by. Yi Xian was amused. Passing by? The guy in front of him was not passing by at all. He came to find trouble with him. However, Yi Xian did not kill him. He sheathed his sword. Yi Xian left on the black flame horse. Yi Xian left. In the same place, cold sweat dripped down the spear-wielding man's forehead. He was at the peak of the divine fusion realm, one of the best among the younger generation in Qingzhou. However, just now, he was shocked to find that he couldn't even fight back in front of Yi Xian, let alone stall Yi Xian for an hour. The gap in strength was too big. After a while, the man shook his head with a bitter smile, then turned and left. Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Karaki Academy. In the main hall, all the higher-ups of Karaki Academy were present. The atmosphere in the hall was solemn. The elites sent by Tsonglan Academy to the state of Jiang had been wiped out. This was not the main point. The main point was that Yi Xian did not return, and Tsonglan Academy alone had wiped out the elites of Karaki Academy. This meant that Tsonglan Academy had risen. Mu Qingxian sat in the main seat, his expression extremely cold. From the beginning to the present, Great Cloud Realm's Karaki Academy had lost too much. Although not many 10,000 law realm powerhouses had died, too many geniuses under 10,000 law realm had died. It had hurt their foundation. It could be said that even if Yi Xian stopped now, there would be a talent gap in the future of Karaki Academy. After all, these young students were the future of Karaki Academy. And now, 50 to 60% of these young students had died. If Yi Xian arrived at the imperial capital, Yi Xian would definitely kill his way to Karaki Academy. No one wanted to see that scene. At this moment, someone suddenly asked, "With Yi Xian's current speed, how long will it take for him to reach the imperial capital?" An old man said solemnly, "If no one stops him, he can reach the imperial capital in about 10 days. 10 days. All of them gazed at Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian said lightly, "If we can't stop him for 20 days, when the reinforcements from the headquarters arrive, the younger generation of Karaki Academy would have been slaughtered by him." Stop Yi Xian for 20 days. The problem was, how could they stop Yi Xian when the Dharma Realm powerhouse couldn't make a move? Mu Qingxian suddenly got up and left. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. After Mu Qingxian left Karaki Academy, he went to the Imperial Palace of Great Cloud Empire. Unfortunately, he was stopped by a maid outside the palace gate. Mu Qingxian glanced into the depths of the palace. Send a message, requesting an audience with King Kaoshan. The maid bowed slightly. Reporting to Dean Mu, King Kaoshan is not in the palace. Mu Qingxian frowned. Not in the palace? Where is it? The maid shook her head. This servant does not know. Mu Qingxian was silent for a long time. In the end, his expression gradually became sinister. Yi Xian, you forced this. Since you don't want to give up, then let's all perish together. With that, he turned around and left. Inside the palace, a woman was squatting on the ground. In front of her was a row of black ants. The woman counted them one by one. 1, 2, 3. At this moment, a maid walked to the woman's side. Your Majesty, Dean Mu has left. The woman didn't reply and continued counting. The maid obediently retreated to the side and didn't dare to disturb her. After an unknown amount of time, the woman suddenly clapped her hands and said excitedly, 471. Speaking of this, she slightly frowned. Why is there one more than last time? Did I count wrong? Let me count again. With that, she began to count again. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. At the side, the maid lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. At this moment, the woman suddenly looked up at the maid. You said that Mu has left? The maid hurriedly said. Yes, Dean Mu has left. The woman nodded slightly. It seems that this Mu has nowhere to go. Who knows what kind of sinister tricks he will use. There is also Dark World. These two shameless forces bullied Yi Xian with so many people. They are really heartless, inhumane, and shameless. This king can't tolerate this. With that, she turned to look at the maid and said angrily, Go get this king's heavy azure dragon saber. This king wants to cut my nails. The maid. Another 3 days passed. Yi Xian was getting closer and closer to the great cloud imperial capital. At night, the world was silent. There were no stars or moon. One couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. In a dense forest, Yi Xian was lying on a black flame horse, hugging his sword with both hands and sleeping soundly. But the black flame horse didn't sleep. It was still moving forward, but its speed was much slower. At this moment, the black flame horse suddenly stopped. Not far in front of it stood an old man. A 10,000 laws realm expert. Yi Xian jumped off the horse and walked towards the old man. Soon, he was in front of the old man. He knew this old man. It was the old man that he asked the other party to beat up in front of the city gate. When Yi Xian walked in front of the old man's aura suddenly dropped. Soon, the old man's aura became weaker and weaker. Soon, the old man's aura dropped to the divine combination realm. Lowering his realm, Yi Xian clenched the spirit elegant sword in his hand. The old man stared at Yi Xian. Now, I am not bullying the weak. With that, he suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a palm was already above Yi Xian's head. When the palm fell, the ground under Yi Xian's feet instantly cracked. At the same time, a powerful palm force locked onto Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian felt as if he was being pressed by a mountain, unable to move. And at this moment, a powerful sword force accompanied by sword intent swept out from Yi Xian's body. Boom! The palm force that was suppressing Yi Xian was instantly broken. However, Yi Xian was directly sent flying dozens of feet away by the old man's palm. Yi Xian had just stopped when a shadow suddenly swept in front of him. Then, a fist with a powerful and overbearing force went straight for his face. Fast. Strong. Facing this punch, Yi Xian did not dodge. He held the sword with both hands and slashed down. Bang! Yi Xian was sent flying again. However, the moment he was sent flying, a sword light flashed across the field and went straight for the old man. The old man was expressionless. He lightly stomped his right foot and a stone shot out from the ground, directly hitting the flying sword. Bang! The sword light shattered and the flying sword flew back to Yi Xian. The old man lightly pressed his right foot against the ground while he strode forward with his left foot. He instantly seemed like an extremely hungry cheetah hunting its prey, and he instantly charged forward at an unparalleled speed. At the moment the old man charged forward, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A strand of sword light suddenly appeared in the dark night. The old man didn't retreat but advanced instead. He sped up and punched out. Bang! The sword light shattered and was blasted flying. Moreover, the old man had retreated to the spot. The sword that was blasted flying spun a few times in midair before it finally landed firmly in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword fell into his hand. He held it in his hand as he walked slowly towards the old man, and there was a wisp of an excited smile on the corners of his mouth. This time, he'd finally met his match. I can practice. On the other hand, the old man's expression was extremely solemn as he stood in front of Yi Xian. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian's battle strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Although he had suppressed his cultivation to the Divine Union realm, his battle awareness and some special techniques were still present. However, the moment they clashed, he discovered that Yi Xian's strength had already reached such a level that they were actually evenly matched. And Yi Xian was only at the Nether Passage realm. If he reached the Divine Union realm. Thinking of this, the old man's expression darkened. The old man slowly clenched his fists as the ground beneath his feet trembled slightly. On the other hand, the sword force on Yi Xian's body also grew stronger and stronger at this moment. Gathering force. Gathering force with the sword. This was unique to the sword master. The old man squinted his eyes and clenched his fists even tighter. At the same time, a violent aura surged out from his body. The ground beneath his feet could no longer withstand the power he released and started to crack. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from the spot and a sword light slashed towards the old man. This sword was like a blazing sun that instantly lit up the surroundings as if it was daytime. One sword to decide life and death. He had not used this sword for a very long time because after he became a swordmaster, there was no longer anyone who was qualified for him to use this sword. The moment Yi Xian used his sword, the old man suddenly charged out and punched towards Yi Xian's sword with both fists. There were two dazzling balls of fist light on his fists. Wherever they passed, the air would instantly shatter. Not only that, but the powerful fist force also caused the ground within 100 zhong around the two of them to crack layer by layer. The sword and the fists were getting closer and closer. There was a moment of silence. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out in the dark night. As the explosion resounded, the two figures retreated rapidly. While Yi Xian was retreating, the sword case on his back suddenly trembled violently. Then, 7 swords suddenly flew out and streaked across the field like 7 bolts of lightning. Opposite Yi Xian, the old man's pupils suddenly constricted. At this moment, he could no longer care about anything else and immediately stopped suppressing his cultivation. Boom! Without any warning, the 7 swords were sent flying. Dharma realm. At this moment, the old man had already recovered his cultivation. After recovering his cultivation, he easily blocked Yi Xian's 7 flying swords. If he hadn't recovered to the Dharma realm, the 7 swords would have been enough to kill him. The old man stared at Yi Xian in the distance. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, and his right hand had been cut open by a sword. At this moment, he had to admit that he couldn't defeat Yi Xian by suppressing his cultivation. However, he could injure Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian had already suffered serious injuries. Blood was continuously flowing from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Not only that, but his entire face was sickly pale. It was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. The old man suddenly grinned hideously. Yi Xian, you can't hold on any longer? The show has just begun. As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man appeared beside him. Dharma realm. The middle-aged man's aura suddenly began to drop. In an instant, the middle-aged man's cultivation was forcefully suppressed to the divine combination realm. The middle-aged man stared straight at Yi Xian. Come, continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged straight at Yi Xian. However, he soon stopped. This was because there were 12 golden men in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian faced the middle-aged man. Come, continue. P.S. I've been writing books for 4 to 5 years, and I've never stopped writing. Recently, due to some family matters, I've barely been able to make it through 2 chapters. I feel guilty, but there's nothing I can do. Please forgive me. If you can't forgive me, you can scold me, but please don't insult my family. Thank you very much. Once the matter is settled, I'll return to 3 chapters. Everyone, I'm sorry for this period of time. Clasped fist, end of this chapter. Chapter 191. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian and didn't dare to make a move. Because he knew how terrifying the 12 golden men were. If he didn't lower his cultivation, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. But the problem was that he had lowered his cultivation, and the 12 golden men were all peak Divine Union Realm experts. Moreover, they were monstrous Divine Union Realm experts. 1 against 1, or even 1 against 3, he wouldn't have a problem. But 1 against 12? That was impossible. Not to mention that there was still Yi Xian nearby. Yi Xian's flying sword was still a huge threat to him. But he naturally wasn't willing to stop now. Because Yi Xian was clearly injured, it was a good opportunity to kill him. If he missed this opportunity and allowed Yi Xian to recover, it would be very troublesome. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment before saying, "Come out." As the middle-aged man's voice fell, another 2 myriad law realm experts appeared on the scene. However, the 2 of them quickly suppressed their cultivation to the Divine Unity realm. 3 peak Divine Union realm experts. Or rather, pseudo-Dharma realm experts. This time, Xueqi College only sent 4 of them, which was already a lot. Because Xueqi College only had a total of 9 Dharma realm experts, they sent 4 of them, which was quite a lot. The reason why they didn't send all of them was because they didn't dare to bet everything on one throw. Moreover, they had to be on guard against other forces. The middle-aged man glanced at the 12 golden men with grave and fearful eyes. Because the 12 golden men were really strong, and they were even a threat to him now. But at this moment, he didn't want to let go of this opportunity to injure Yi Xian. After pondering for a moment, the middle-aged man said, "The 2 of you hold back the 12 golden men. I will deal with Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 people beside him charged out. As the middle-aged man was about to make a move, the 2 who charged out first were instantly pushed back tens of meters. The middle-aged man was stunned. Instant defeat? Yi Xian grinned. "Come on, let's continue." The middle-aged man clenched his right hand tightly. Not far from him, the old man who was almost killed by Yi Xian suddenly said, "I underestimated him. Go back and think about it." The middle-aged man stared fixedly at Yi Xian for a short moment before he said, "Retreat." After saying that, the 3 of them returned to their original states and turned to leave. Lowering one's realm. Yi Xian collected the 12 statues. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The golden man frowned deeply. He hadn't expected Xueqi Gakuen to play such a trick. The 10,000 laws realm would lower their realm, and when they couldn't win, they would immediately restore their realm. This was simply cheating. If he wanted to kill his opponent, he had to be fast enough to kill him before his opponent could recover his cultivation level. Otherwise, once these people recovered to the Dharma realm, his sword would not be able to kill them. He also found that there was indeed a big gap between him and the Dharma realm. This gap couldn't be made up even with equipment. Yi Xian collected the 12 golden statues in front of him. In that instant just now, he directly consumed over 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. Fortunately, he'd stopped in time, otherwise, he would have consumed at least 1 million top-grade spirit stones. Even though the 12 golden statues were strong enough, they were truly too expensive. Every time he used them, his heart ached. He was still poor. Yi Xian sighed deeply. Even though he had over 1 billion gold coins and 2 million top-grade spirit stones on him now, he was actually very poor. Because he still owed the Immortal Indulgence House a lot of top-grade spirit stones. Moreover, every time he used the golden statues, he would be poor again. Make money. Work hard to make money. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then he took out a golden sword pill and consumed it. After that, he leaped onto the black flame horse and disappeared into the boundless night. In the night, Yi Xian's expression was slightly gloomy as he rode the black flame horse. Because he'd noticed that no matter where he went, Xueqi Gakuen was able to accurately locate him. In other words, his whereabouts had always been in the grasp of Xueqi Gakuen. If this continued, he would only be in a passive position. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly sped up. The black flame horse looked very cool when it galloped in the dark because the ground behind it would burn with black flames. Fortunately, the flames didn't spread and only burned for a while before vanishing. 2 hours later, when the sky was turning bright, Yi Xian entered an ancient city called Mirror City. After entering the city, Yi Xian didn't immediately leave the city for the Great Cloud Empire. Instead, he went to the Immortal Indulgence House. The person who received him was the sixth-floor master of the Immortal Indulgence House. In the room, the sixth-floor master was silent for a long time, and then he said, "It'll be difficult for you to get rid of Kuraki Gakuin's surveillance." Yi Xian asked, "Why?" The sixth-floor master said in a deep voice, "If I'm not wrong, it should be Dharma Realm experts from Kuraki Gakuin or Dark World who are monitoring you. To be precise, it should be Dark World. Only Dharma Realm experts from Dark World can follow you without anyone noticing. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Tracking you, little friend." Yi Xian asked again, "Is there a way to get rid of them?" The sixth-floor master smiled bitterly. "This kind of experts, especially the assassins from Dark World, are good at concealment and speed. If you want to kill them, it'll be very difficult unless it's a law-controlling realm expert." Yi Xian thought for a while, and then he said, "How about this? I don't need to get rid of them. I just need to stop them. After that, I'll change my appearance and go to the Great Cloud Empire." The sixth-floor master glanced at Yi Xian. "Forgive me for being straightforward, little friend. Even if you go to the Great Cloud Empire, I'm afraid you won't be able to do anything. You'll even make the matter worse. Not only that, you might be in danger." In his opinion, what Yi Xian did was a bit unwise. Challenging the entire Dark World and Kuraki Gakuin alone? That was impossible. Yi Xian smiled. "Even if I don't go to the Great Cloud Empire, will they stop targeting me?" The sixth-floor master fell silent. Yi Xian said again, "They won't. They will target me again and again. Not only will they target me, they will also attack the people around me. Instead of waiting for them to be born, I might as well take the initiative to attack. Even if I can't kill them, it'll be good to scare them. Otherwise, I'll just passively wait to be beaten. It'll be really frustrating." The sixth-floor master looked at Yi Xian with a complicated gaze. "This is a typical werewolf. Even if I die, I'll bite off a piece of flesh from you. The Kuraki Gakuin and Dark World are really unlucky to provoke this guy." The sixth-floor master thought for a moment, then said, "How about this? I'll send someone. No, I'll personally go and stop the assassins from the Dark World that are following you. However, whether or not you can avoid their pursuit will depend on you." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." The sixth-floor master was about to speak, but at this time, a middle-aged man suddenly rushed into the room. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and the sixth-floor master, and said in a deep voice, "They've surrounded the outside." The sixth-floor master frowned. "Kuraki Gakuin?" The middle-aged man nodded. "Mu Qingxian wants us to hand over State Scholar Yi, otherwise." At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "What's there to be afraid of? Just one word, kill them." After saying that, he picked up the sword on the table and walked out. The middle-aged man and the sixth-floor master were stunned. But soon, Yi Xian walked back. He sat back and put the sword on the table. After a short silence, he faced the sixth-floor master and the middle-aged man. "Is there a back door to escape?" Sixth-floor master. The middle-aged man. End of this chapter. Chapter 192. Inside the room, the sixth-floor master glanced at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man smiled bitterly. "It's the Great Cloud Empire's Black Flame Cavalrymen. There are more than 50 of them. Apart from that, there are some obscure auras in the dark. They should be assassins from the Dark World. 50 Black Flame Cavalrymen." The sixth-floor master's expression turned grave. In Qingzhou, the Black Flame Cavalrymen were invincible below the Dharma realm. Not to mention Qingzhou, even in the Divine Central Continent, the Black Flame Cavalrymen weren't weak. At the very least, they weren't weaker than the Dao soldiers of Drunken Immortal Inn and Kuraki College. 50. Now he knew why Yi Xian had retreated. Even with Yi Xian's strength, it would be difficult for him to fight against 50 of them. These Black Flame Cavalrymen weren't like ordinary cavalrymen. They were all elites. Whether it was their personal strength or the equipment they wore, they were all top-notch. Their battle prowess wasn't something ordinary cavalrymen could compare to. If Yi Xian fought with these cavalrymen, he would definitely be delayed or even killed. "What should we do now?" the middle-aged man asked suddenly. The sixth-floor master looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shrugged. "Run." The middle-aged man and the sixth-floor master's expression turned strange. Yi Xian was puzzled. Can't we run? The sixth floor master smiled bitterly. Of course we can. But shouldn't you be fighting? In his impression, Yi Xian was a very tough person. Yi Xian shook his head. They are fighting 50 against 1. Am I stupid? Actually, he wasn't afraid of the Black Flame cavalrymen. The main problem was those Dharma Realm old monsters from Xueqi College. If they were mixed in with the Black Flame cavalrymen, or rather, they were definitely mixed in. She wasn't afraid of them. Most importantly, why should he fight to the death with these people? If he could win, he would fight. If he couldn't, he should run. The sixth floor master stood up. Little friend, my drunken immortal inn has 6 tunnels that lead to various places outside the city. Follow me. Wait. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. Give me a moment. With that, he picked up the Lingxiu sword and walked towards the door. The middle-aged man and the sixth floor master looked at each other in confusion. Outside the drunken immortal inn, Yi Xian walked to the entrance with his sword in hand. Not far from him stood rows of Black Flame cavalrymen, a total of 50 of them. These Black Flame cavalrymen were organized as one, and their bodies emitted a sharp killing intent. In all fairness, the Black Flame cavalry was indeed very strong. If they were to fight on the battlefield, he might not be able to defeat the 50 people in front of him. These people were much stronger than some of the geniuses on the Azure Province martial rankings. After Yi Xian came out, the 50 cavalrymen's gazes instantly fell on him. Yi Xian suddenly pointed his spirit-elegant sword at the 50 Black Flame cavalrymen. I'll fight you to the death at daybreak. With that, he turned around and walked into the drunken immortal inn. Outside the building, in the darkness somewhere beside Mu Qingxian, the mistress of the darkness said in a deep voice, Daybreak! Mu Qingxian said indifferently, In the dark world assassins have the advantage, and he is at a disadvantage. He naturally isn't willing to fight with us in the dark. If he wants daybreak, then we'll wait for daybreak. It suits me perfectly. Delay. Their objective was actually to delay. Because they were very clear that even if there were 50 Black Flame cavalrymen, it would be hard to kill Yi Xian. One had to know that Yi Xian still had the existence of 12 golden men. Hence, their thinking was very simple. Delay Yi Xian and wait for reinforcements to arrive. The mistress of the darkness thought about it and nodded. That's true. Just like this, the group of people waited and waited. Roughly 4 hours later, the sky finally brightened. Everyone looked towards the entrance of the drunken immortal inn. The 50 cavalrymen were waiting in formation, and all of them had vigilant expressions. Because they knew who they were going to deal with. Sword Master. The youngest sword master in the Azure Province. Furthermore, Yi Xian still had 12 golden men that were comparable to peak divine fusion realm experts. They didn't dare to be careless. The 50 Black Flame cavalrymen stared fixedly at the entrance of the drunken immortal inn. As long as that man appeared, they would immediately launch an attack. 1 breath passed. 10 breaths passed. Half an hour passed. A quarter of an hour passed. At the entrance of the drunken immortal inn, that man still did not come out. In the corner, Mu Qingxian frowned deeply. Another quarter of an hour passed, and still no one came out. And Mu Qingxuan's expression was already gloomy. A quarter of an hour later, an old man appeared at the entrance of the drunken immortal inn. 6th floor master. 6th floor master stretched his waist, then looked at Mu Qingxian in the corner and smiled. Dean Mu, good morning. Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared in front of 6th floor master. He stared fixedly at 6th floor master. Where is he? Person. 6th floor master had a blank expression. Who? Mu Qingxian was practically roaring. Yi Xian. Yi Xian? 6th floor master was astonished. You don't know? He has already left. Boom. A powerful aura suddenly surged out from Mu Qingxuan's body. 6th floor master's figure trembled, and he directly retreated over 10 feet. The ground within 10 feet of Mu Qingxian had already turned into a deep pit. Mu Qingxian clenched his fists, and his expression was somewhat distorted. Gone. He never thought that Yi Xian would actually escape. Escape. What about the fight to the death at daybreak? Was this still a swordsman? A swordsman who was so afraid of death? A swordsman who went back on his words? Too shameless. Too untrustworthy. Mu Qingxian was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. In the distance, sixth floor master smiled. Dean Mu, don't be angry. State Scholar Yi has some words for you. He said that he is not feeling well today, so he decided to fight another day. He has already chosen the location. It is your Karaki Academy. Quickly go back and wait for him. Haha. With that, he turned and left. In the same place, although Mu Qingxuan's fists were still clenched, he had already calmed down. At this moment, Mistress of the Dark World appeared beside Mu Qingxian. 4 hours. I'm afraid he has already reached Xueqi. Xueqi. Mu Qingxuan's eyes narrowed. This Xueqi was very close to the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. As long as he passed through Xueqi and 2 more small cities, he could reach the Great Cloud Imperial Capital in a day's journey. Once Yi Xian entered the Great Cloud Imperial Capital and went to Karaki Academy, Mu Qingxian did not dare to think about it. With Yi Xian's personality, once he entered the Great Cloud Imperial Capital, he would absolutely do anything. Mu Qingxian suddenly looked up. Chase after him. We must stop him and buy time for the reinforcements of the Divine Central Continent. Mistress of the Dark World nodded, turned and left. Mu Qingxian looked up at the drunken immortal inn not far away and said fiercely, Drunken immortal inn, you will regret helping him like this. With that, he turned and left. In the pavilion, 6th floor master chuckled. Regret? The one who regrets the most should be your Karaki Academy. After a dozen breaths, 50 black flame cavalrymen left the city, leaving a trail of dust behind them. Chase after Yi Xian. On a plain, Yi Xian was riding the black flame horse, galloping madly all the way. Behind him was a long trail of black flames. On the horseback, Yi Xian pondered. With his current speed, if nothing unexpected happened, he could reach the Great Cloud Imperial Capital in 6 or 7 days at most. Once he reached the Great Cloud Imperial Capital, the battlefield would be at Karaki Academy. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. In front of him, 3 black arrows were shooting toward him at lightning speed. When he raised his head, they were already in front of him. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Chi-chi! 2 wisps of sword light shot out from Yi Xian's eyes. Boom! In front of Yi Xian, the arrows directly shattered. At this moment, a spear pierced through the air from a distance. The spear tore through the air, producing a sharp and ear-piercing sound. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the exquisite spirit sword flew out with a whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the exquisite spirit sword stabbed the tip of the spear. It was a tit for tat. Bang! The spear trembled violently and flew back. A few dozen feet away, a hand held the spear tightly. It was a woman with a head full of dirty whips. The woman's face was painted with colorful stripes, and she wore a big nose ring. Her clothes were also extremely revealing. She only wore a beast skin tube top and a beast skin short skirt. On the woman's left and right were 5 men. 3 of them carried big bows on their backs, while the other 2 held spears in their hands. All 5 of them had fierce expressions. In front of the 5 men, the woman sized up Yi Xian, then turned to look at the men beside her. She smiled and said, Qingzhou's #1 genius? He's not that great. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. My beast wolf mercenary group wants your head. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from the black flame horse. At the same time, a wisp of sword light quietly appeared in front of the woman. The woman's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, her eyes were filled with fear. She sensed lethal danger from this attack. Because when it arrived in front of her, her first thought was that she wouldn't be able to resist it. This attack would kill her. However, she clearly didn't want to just wait for death to come. She stomped her left foot on the ground, and a powerful aura instantly swept through her. At the same time, she stabbed the spear forward. This attack caused her entire face to warp. It was a stab with her full strength. Because she knew that she would definitely die if she couldn't resist this attack from Yi Xian. The spear stabbed forward while the sword arrived. Crack! The clear and melodious sound of metal breaking resounded, and then a ray of light pierced through the center of her forehead. The woman's figure stiffened on the spot, and Yi Xian was standing in front of her. She gazed at Yi Xian. All right. Quickly. As soon as she finished speaking, the center of her forehead suddenly split open, and then blood sprayed out from it while she fell to the ground. On the other hand, the 5 men by the woman's side were completely stunned. An instant kill? She was killed just like that? Their faces were filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, 7 swords suddenly flew out from the sword box on Yi Xian's back. Hiss, 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 hiss. The other 5 were killed before they could even react. Yi Xian cleaned up the battlefield, and his gains weren't small. There were around 400 million gold coins, and there were actually over 1 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 1 million. Yi Xian was slightly excited. What he lacked the most right now were supreme-grade spirit stones. Because only with supreme-grade spirit stones could he utilize the 12 golden colossi. What timely help! Yi Xian bowed slightly to the corpses and said sincerely, "Good people, all good people." Hee hee. At this moment, a low chuckle sounded out from behind Yi Xian. It was very close, about a dozen steps away. Yi Xian held the spirit elegant sword in his right hand, and his expression was solemn because he actually didn't notice that the person had arrived behind him. Who was it? P.S. It's been 2 chapters lately, but no one is scolding me. There are still many people voting, leaving messages, and comforting me. Thank you all for your support. Many people want me to stop updating. Actually, what I want to say is, to my dad, I'm his son, and I have the responsibility to be filial. To the readers, I'm an author, and I have the same responsibility. The responsibility to write well, and the responsibility to update. Moreover, I'm the only one in the family with an income. I don't write, so I don't have any income. Life isn't easy, but I still have to live on with a smile, and work hard with everyone. Genius 1 second to remember this website address. Mobile version. Chapter 193. Yi Xian turned around. Not far in front of him stood a little girl. She was about 16 or 17 years old and wore a light green dress. She was smiling at him faintly. She walked slowly towards Yi Xian with a mischievous look on her face. Her eyes were lively and she looked very cute. In her right hand was a mace. It was not big and was about the size of her arm. When he saw the mace, Yi Xian's expression changed again. It was a true grade spirit weapon. A true grade spirit weapon. Who was this little girl? When the little girl was only 5 or 6 steps away from Yi Xian's expression changed suddenly. He tapped the tip of his foot lightly and his entire body floated back a distance of 30 meters, distancing himself from the little girl. The little girl was stunned for a moment before she grinned. "Don't be afraid. It won't hurt. I guarantee that your head will explode with 1 hammer. There won't be any pain before you die." When she finished speaking, she appeared in front of Yi Xian again. However, Yi Xian retreated another 30 meters. The little girl frowned. "Come here. Let me hammer you to death." Yi Xian asked, "Why do you want to hammer me to death?" The little girl giggled. "If I beat you to death, there will be a lot of money." When she finished speaking, she threw the mace at Yi Xian. In the distance, the moment the little girl attacked, Yi Xian took a step forward and stabbed with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian retreated more than 200 feet in an instant. In front of him was a ravine that was more than 200 feet long. It was created by his feet. Yi Xian looked down at his right hand. At this moment, his entire right arm was trembling violently. Not only that, but the spirit elegant sword in his hand was also trembling. There were even cracks at the tip of the sword. So powerful. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the little girl not far away. The little girl sized him up with a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Aya, little swordsman, you're not bad. You didn't die after taking a hit from me, little goblin Tuoba." As she spoke, she gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. "Not bad. You're 1/10 as good as I am. You're worthy of praise." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Damn it, are you praising me or praising yourself?" Meanwhile, the little demoness called Taba was about to attack once more when Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Wait." The little girl stopped. She blinked and swung the hammer in her hand. "What are you doing?" Yi Xian said seriously, "I can't beat you." The little girl said matter-of-factly, "You can't beat me in the first place. Is there a problem?" Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl swung the hammer in her hand and was about to attack again when Yi Xian hurriedly said, "I have a problem, a big problem." The little girl frowned. Why do you have so many problems? Isn't it just death? What's there to be afraid of? It's just a hammer strike. Yi Xian was speechless. You're not the one who's going to die. Seeing that the little girl was a little impatient, Yi Xian walked in front of her. He flicked his finger and a gold card appeared in front of the little girl. The little girl sized up the gold card. Soon her eyes lit up. There were 500 million gold coins in the gold card. 500 million gold coins. The little girl grabbed it in her hand. Then, she looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Is this for me? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, I was deeply attracted to you from the first time I saw you. The little girl blinked. Why? Yi Xian said seriously, outstanding. You're like a firefly in the night. Even the night can't block your light. A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. I, Yi Xian, want to be friends with you. I like to be friends with outstanding people. The little girl sized up Yi Xian with eyes full of admiration. It was a look of admiration. You have a good eye. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. I don't have eyes. At this moment, the little girl waved the gold card in her hand. 500 million gold coins. You're giving it to me just like that? Yi Xian said seriously, it's too vulgar to talk about money between friends. Since you've come from the Central Divine Prefecture, you must be in urgent need of money. Take this money for emergencies. If it's not enough, come find me. I'll gather it for you even if I have to sell my blood. The little girl was about to speak when a group of black flame cavalrymen rushed over from behind her. Yi Xian's face sank. He hadn't expected the black flame cavalrymen to arrive so quickly. The little girl turned to look at the black flame cavalrymen. Who are they? Yi Xian pulled the little girl behind him and said solemnly, they're the cavalrymen that Xueqi Academy invited. In any case, you go first. I'll bring up the rear. Don't worry about me. Really, I can hold on. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and charged towards the cavalryman. Behind him, the little girl was slightly stunned. In the distance, Yi Xian charged towards the black flame cavalryman with his sword in hand. The aura of his sword grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, the ground beneath his feet cracked open with every step he took. Yi Xian and the black flame cavalryman drew closer and closer. When he was 3 m away from them, he suddenly leaped up and slashed down with his sword in both hands. A bright ray of sword light flashed down. Bang! The leader of the black flame cavalryman was sent flying over 100 meters away. When he crashed to the ground, he didn't stand up again. However, Yi Xian was also sent flying. Not only that, there was a bloody hole on his left shoulder. Yi Xian landed in front of the little girl. Looking at Yi Xian on the ground, the little girl pulled Yi Xian out of kindness. Hey, are you all right? Yi Xian rubbed his chest and shook his head. I'm fine. As he spoke, he raised his sword and charged towards the black flame cavalryman again. He roared angrily, come at me if you can. Don't hurt that little girl. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the little girl looked at the gold card in her hand and sighed softly. Too outstanding. Dad, you must have saved the Azure Firmament world in your past life. Otherwise, how could you have given birth to such an outstanding daughter like me? Bang! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly landed in front of the little girl. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood and stood up. At this moment, the black flame cavalryman charged over and surrounded him and the little girl. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was expressionless. The little girl sized up the black flame cavalryman curiously. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the sky above the black flame cavalryman. This person was Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian. His eyes were filled with wariness and doubt. This was because he was clear about Yi Xian's strength. Even if he couldn't defeat these black flame cavalrymen, it was impossible for him to be suppressed like this. There's a trap. Now, he had figured out Yi Xian's character. This was definitely a despicable, shameless, and sinister person. There must be a trap. Soon, Mu Qingxuan's gaze landed on the little girl beside Yi Xian. The little girl looked at Mu Qingxian. So many of you against one person. Not kind at all. Mu Qingxian said coldly, it's none of your business. The little girl was stunned. Then, she looked at Yi Xian. He scolded me? Yi Xian nodded. I heard him. The little girl glared at Mu Qingxian. Damn you! Saying this, she looked at Yi Xian. How should I scold him? Yi Xian said. Chest. The little girl blinked and looked at Mu Qingxian. Damn your chest, Mu Qingxian suddenly said. Kill him. The black flame cavalrymen were about to attack. At this moment, the little girl suddenly raised her hammer and rushed out. Before anyone could react, a black flame cavalryman not far from Yi Xian was sent flying. In the air, the armor of the black flame cavalryman started to crack. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth could not help but twitch at the sight of that. God, that was a clear-grade equipment. It was shattered with one hammer? Mu Qingxian was also stunned. What the hell? The little girl did not stop. She turned her hand and smashed down with her hammer again. Bang! Beside her, a black flame cavalryman's spear was instantly shattered. Then, the black flame cavalryman was sent flying. Instant kill. The little girl still wanted to attack. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pulled her arm. Don't use too much strength. Those armors and weapons are worth tens of millions of gold coins. The little girl's eyes lit up. Tens of millions? Yi Xian nodded. They are all treasures. The little girl turned to look at the black flame cavalrymen. At this moment, the black flame cavalrymen were already rushing over. The little girl suddenly smashed her hammer on the ground. Bang! The ground in an area of 300 m shook violently, and then the 10+ black flame cavalrymen in front of them were blasted flying by a powerful force. At the same time, this force forcefully stopped the remaining black flame cavalrymen. Besides the cavalrymen that were sent flying, the rest of the cavalrymen stopped. The ground within 100 zhong had completely cracked. Yi Xian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. This little girl was too strong. She was definitely in the top 10 of the monstrous genius list. In the air, Mu Qingxian was stunned. He looked at the little girl. You, who exactly are you? The little girl looked up at Mu Qingxian. She gently moved her bangs away from her forehead. Little demon Tuoba, my father said that I was born to save the world. Mu Qingxian. Yi Xian walked to little demon Tuoba's side. He pulled little demon Tuoba's sleeve. Be careful. He is an expert at the peak of the 10,000 laws realm. Little demon Tuoba waved her small hand. My father can kill 100 people like him with one slap. Of course, I am not someone who relies on my father. As she spoke, she looked at Mu Qingxian. My uncle can also kill 100 people like you with one slap. If you want to make a move, I will call my uncle. Yi Xian was speechless. You don't rely on your father. Is there any difference between calling your uncle or your father? In the air, Mu Qingxuan's expression was extremely ugly. There was no doubt that this little girl came from the divine central continent. Because in Azure province, there was no one so terrifying. Moreover, from the little girl's words, it was clear that her background was not simple. Mu Qingxian pondered for a moment. His expression softened. Little girl, I have offended you before. Please forgive me. My Karaki Academy has no intention of becoming enemies with your excellency. Yi Xian suddenly pulled little demon Tuoba's sleeve. Make him pay for the psychological damage. Little demon Tuoba blinked. Then, she looked at Mu Qingxian. Pay. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. How much? Yi Xian said seriously, you are so outstanding, but he actually scolded you just now. This cannot be tolerated. Absolutely cannot be tolerated. Make him pay 2 billion. Otherwise, call your uncle here. Call your father here too. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 194. Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian stared at Yi Xian. If looks could kill, Yi Xian would have died a long time ago. Yi Xian ignored Mu Qingxian and faced little demon Tuoba. Did your father scold you? Little demon Tuoba shook her head. Yi Xian asked again, did your uncle scold you? Little demon Tuoba shook her head again. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, then what right does he have to scold you? Hearing this, little demon Tuoba clenched her left hand. She looked up at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, what right do you have to scold me? Yi Xian quickly echoed and pointed at Mu Qingxian angrily. What right do you have to scold such an outstanding person? Hearing Yi Xian's words, little demon Tuoba became even angrier. Her chest heaved up and down, and the hammer in her hand trembled violently. Yi Xian wanted to say something, but little demon Tuoba suddenly cried. Yi Xian swallowed the words he was about to say. What was going on? Mu Qingxian was also stunned in the air. Little demon Tuoba wiped her tears and said with incomparable grievance, "My uncle, my father, my brother, and my third uncle have never scolded me. What right does he have to scold me? Why?" Yi Xian suddenly felt a sense of guilt. This little girl, she really felt wronged. At this moment, little demon Tuoba suddenly looked at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, 20 billion. Compensate me 20 billion. Otherwise, I will ask my uncle to beat you to death. With that, she took out a sound transmission stone. Mu Qingxian clenched his fists tightly and his expression was gloomy. Threat. This was a blatant threat. 20 billion? Even if he sold Xueqi Academy, he wouldn't have that much. Even if he did, he wouldn't pay. Mu Qingxian glanced at Yi Xian. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure trembled, and he disappeared. The surviving Black Flame cavalrymen wanted to leave as well. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Don't let them leave. Kill them." After saying that, he directly rushed out. Little demon Tuoba also rushed out with Yi Xian in hand. However, she wasn't chasing after the Black Flame cavalry, but Mu Qingxian. Yi Xian hurriedly pulled her back. That's the peak of the 10,000 Dharma realm. We can't beat it for now, but we can beat it first. As he spoke, he pointed at the group of Black Flame cavalrymen in the distance. Go easy on them, they're all money. Little demon Tuoba nodded instinctively. Then he was pulled by Yi Xian and rushed over. It would be a bit difficult for Yi Xian to defeat 50 Black Flame cavalrymen alone, but with the little demon Empress Tuoba, it wouldn't be difficult at all. At this moment, Yi Xian didn't hold back any longer because these Black Flame cavalrymen weren't simple, and the slightest mistake could result in their defeat. About an hour later, Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba stopped. The two of them sat on the ground, and behind them was a ground full of corpses. They were all Black Flame cavalrymen. They chased them all the way, and after chasing them for nearly 50 kilometers, they finally killed more than 40 Black Flame cavalrymen. The two of them sat on the ground, and little demon Tuoba leaned against Yi Xian. She used her hammer to point at the nearby Black Flame cavalrymen, and asked curiously, "How much are they worth?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, "A lot. 40 sets of equipment." Most of them were clear rank equipment, and it could be said to be a huge profit. The only pity was the Black Flame horses. After the cavalrymen were killed, the Black Flame horses had already escaped, and he and little demon Tuoba couldn't stop them at all. After resting for a moment, Yi Xian put away the Black Flame cavalry's equipment, and then gave 20 sets to little demon Tuoba. These 20 sets are yours. You can go back to the Divine Central Continent to sell them, or you can follow me to the Imperial Capital to sell them. It's up to you. To the Imperial Capital. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue. Little demon Tuoba practically didn't even think about it. Yi Xian grinned. Come, let's go to the Imperial Capital. As soon as he finished speaking, he called over his Black Flame horse. Let's sit together. Little demon Tuoba didn't think too much about it, and she immediately leaped onto her Black Flame horse while Yi Xian followed behind her. It didn't take long for the two of them to vanish into the distance. After Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba left, Mu Qingxian appeared here once more, and his expression was surprisingly calm as he gazed at the corpses that covered the ground. A short moment later, he turned around and left. On a plain, Yi Xian led little demon Tuoba as they galloped madly on the Black Flame horse. On the back of the Black Flame horse, little demon Tuoba suddenly asked, "Sword cultivator, I forgot what your name is." "What's your name?" "Yi Xian." "You're the sword master?" "Yes." "Why are you so weak?" Yi Xian was speechless. "Did I say something wrong?" "No. Actually, it's not that I'm weak, it's that you're too strong. In front of you, all geniuses and monstrous geniuses are trash. Swordsman, although you're a little weak, you're an honest person." "I like that." Yi Xian was speechless. This time, Xueqi Academy and Dark World didn't send anyone to cause trouble, so their journey was very smooth, and they were getting closer and closer to the Imperial Capital. Great Cloud Empire Imperial Palace. In a certain garden, a woman in a black dress was holding the hand of a little boy in a dragon robe as they slowly walked on the gravel Xiao Dao. The little boy suddenly tilted his head and looked at the woman. "Sister, Grand Tutor said that I'm old. I should be in power." The woman stopped and looked at the little boy. "What do you think?" The little boy was silent. The woman smiled. "You still want it, right?" The little boy lowered his head even more. The woman gently rubbed the little boy's head. "It won't be long before the entire world will be yours. I won't fight with you for the throne." After saying that, she turned her head and looked not far away. There was a birdcage there, and inside the birdcage was a canary. Looking at the birdcage, the woman suddenly smiled. "Without this birdcage, that bird will obtain a wider sky." After saying that, she turned her head to the side. "Pass down the order. Grand Tutor's words and actions are improper. Beheaded." Li family colluded with outsiders to rebel. Beheaded. Gu family to rebel. Beheaded. Qing family to rebel. Beheaded. Tian family to rebel. Beheaded. She listed more than 20 aristocratic families in one breath, and all of them were the aristocratic families of Great Cloud Empire. The little boy was completely dumbfounded. "Yes," someone answered in the dark and quietly retreated. The little boy looked at the woman with some astonishment, but the woman smiled. "Don't be surprised, they're all malignant tumors that should have been removed long ago. There are still 2 of the biggest tumors, but they should be removed soon." After saying that, she let go of the little boy's hand and walked away. The little boy didn't follow her, he just lowered his head, and no one knew what he was thinking. The woman slowly walked into the distance and stopped in front of a pool. Mu Qingxian was right in front of her. Mu Qingxian slightly bowed to the woman. "Miss Lian." The woman smiled. Dean Mu failed. Mu Qingxuan's expression was gloomy. After a moment he slightly bowed. "Please help me, Miss Lian." "Help?" The woman shook her head and smiled. "For your Karaki Academy, Great Cloud Empire has lost 150 Black Flame cavalrymen. Apart from that, we also mobilized the aristocratic families in the city to help. To be honest, I've helped you a lot, Dean Mu." Mu Qingxian looked at the woman with a trace of complicated expression. "Miss Lian, I'm not a fool. You seem to be helping Karaki Academy, but in fact, you're helping Great Cloud Empire, right? Out of the 50 Black Flame cavalrymen, 40 were killed, but Great Cloud Empire didn't take any responsibility. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page." Just this point alone made him understand a lot of things. Weaken. This woman was using Yi Xian to weaken their influence in Great Cloud Empire. Lian Wanli's smile gradually faded. "Dean Mu, my Great Cloud Empire has lost 150 Black Flame cavalrymen for your Karaki Academy. I'm really disappointed by your words." Mu Qingxuan's expression changed. After a moment he squeezed out a smile. Yes, I misspoke. I came here to ask for Miss Lian's help. As long as Miss Lian closes the city gate, dispatches the army to guard the surroundings, and activates the Grand Formation, Yi Xian won't be able to enter the city." "Why?" Lian Wanli suddenly walked to Mu Qingxian and looked straight at him. "Yi Xian has become a sword master at such a young age. Such a talent is rare in Qingzhou. As people of Qingzhou, we should be proud of him. Even if we can't be friends, we shouldn't suppress him." Saying that, she shook her head and sighed. "Dean Mu, let me give you a piece of advice. Do more good." Saying that, she turned and left. Mu Qingxuan's expression was as ugly as if he had eaten 10 kilograms of dung. Do more good? Have you ever done kindness for 10,000 li? Who doesn't know that you killed without batting an eye and slaughtered almost the entire Great Cloud Empire? Still doing good. Mu Qingxian almost vomited blood. He knew that Karaki Academy, Dark World, and those aristocratic families had been cheated by this woman. What a huge scam. At this moment, Lian Wanli suddenly stopped. She turned around and smiled. Dean Mu, a friendly reminder. Yi Xian will be here soon. Saying that, she turned around and walked away while humming an unknown tune. Mu Qingxian coldly looked at Lian Wanli and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Because no matter what he said, he would only be humiliating himself. Karaki Academy. Mu Qingxian stood in front of Howran Palace. He raised his head and looked at the sword above his head for an hour. Sword immortal. Mu Qingxian laughed at himself. A sword immortal suppressed Karaki Academy to the point of suffocation. At this moment, he suddenly turned around. Behind him were all Xueqi Academy's students, mentors, and elders. Everyone looked at Mu Qingxian. One of the students suddenly stood up. Dean Mu, if Yi Xian comes to my Xueqi Academy, I am willing to be the first to fight. I want the world to know that there are no cowards in my Xueqi Academy. We are willing to fight. Countless Xueqi Academy's students roared in unison. Mu Qingxuan's eyes had a trace of gratification. My Xueqi Academy students are ultimately unyielding. At this moment, the mistress of the dark world suddenly appeared beside Mu Qingxian. Yi Xian has arrived outside the city. He's here. The scene instantly quietened down. Outside the Great Cloud Imperial capital, Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba rode the black flame horse and slowly walked towards the city gate not far away. Little demon, how did you become so outstanding? Can you teach me? I can't. I was born like this. Sigh, I also want to be as outstanding as you. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't be able to do it in this lifetime. Actually, you aren't that bad. You can see that I, little demon Tuoba, am outstanding at first glance. You are also very not simple. By the way, little demon, how about you call me Big Brother in the future? I will protect you. Whoever bullies you, I will help you beat them up. No. Call me Big Sister. I will protect you in the future. Whoever bullies you, I will help you beat them up. Okay, Big Sister. Little demon Tuoba. P.S. I have been suffering from insomnia recently. I can only sleep by listening to songs. Especially one of the songs. It is very good to listen to. It has been on repeat for a week. I sincerely recommend everyone to listen to it. The song name is very easy to remember. It is called Blue Phoenix Handsome Guy, recommended by Conscience. You all deserve it. End of this chapter. Chapter 195. Big Sister. Tuoba was stunned. Why did it look like a trap? At this moment, Yi Xian said with a smile, I'll be honest with you. I came to the imperial capital to fight. With that, he jumped off the black flame horse and looked up at Tuoba. It's nice to meet you. However, this is a matter between me, Xueqi Academy, and Dark World. I shouldn't have let you get involved. Otherwise it would be too much. With that, he turned and walked toward the city gate. A person naturally had to be righteous. A person without a bottom line was not a person. Swordsman. At this moment, Tuoba's voice came from behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian stopped and turned to face Tuoba. Tuoba grinned. Although you are slippery, you are a good person. I, Tuoba, am willing to be friends with you. Yi Xian grinned. Yi Xian, Qingzhou's Jiang Country, Blue Waves Academy's dean. Tuoba's lips curled up. Tuoba, Divine Central Continent's Tuoba clan's #1 genius, ranked 9th on the monster list. In the future, I will save the world. Yi Xian laughed. Little devil, if you want to save the world, then you have to work hard. Little monster Tuoba nodded earnestly. I will. At this moment, Yi Xian had reached the city gate. A middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of the gate. Dharma Realm. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian without saying anything. However, his aura grew weaker and weaker. Soon, the middle-aged man was suppressed from Dharma Realm to Divine Combination Realm. The middle-aged man stopped near Yi Xian. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the middle-aged man. At the same time, 12 golden men appeared around the middle-aged man. The 12 golden men attacked in unison. At the same time, there was also a wisp of sword light. 3 breaths later, the 12 golden men retreated behind Yi Xian, and in front of Yi Xian, there was a head dripping with blood. It was the head of the middle-aged man. At this moment, his eyes were wide open, as though he had died with a grievance. At that moment, he didn't even have the chance to make a move. It should be said that he was killed before he could even react. With 12 golden men and Yi Xian, there was no doubt that they could kill a Divine Combination Realm cultivator. Yi Xian looked up towards the city gate. Xueqi Academy, I'm coming. With that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. Outside the city gates, little witch Tuoba glanced at the black flame horse beneath her. then hurriedly looked towards the nearby city gates. "Swordsman, your horse." Yi Xian had entered the city. The news quickly spread throughout the capital of Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Soon, countless people gathered at the foot of Xueqi Academy's mountain. Xueqi Academy. This was an ancient force with 1,000 years of history in Azure Province. It was also one of the 3 super overlords in Azure Province. Before this, Xueqi Academy could make Azure Province tremble with a stomp of its foot. Although this sentence was somewhat exaggerated, it was enough to prove Xueqi Academy's influence in Azure Province. But now, a youth less than 20 years old had come to Great Cloud Imperial Capital. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that this youth had threatened to destroy Xueqi Academy. Destroy Xueqi Academy. Even Great Cloud Empire wouldn't dare to say such words. At this moment, countless people had gathered at the foot of Xueqi Academy's mountain. All of them came from all over the imperial capital. Everyone wanted to see how this youth from country of Jiang was going to destroy Xueqi Academy. Xueqi Academy was huge. At the foot of the mountain was a large square. At this moment, there were more than 100,000 people gathered at the square. There were all kinds of people. Wait. Everyone was waiting for Yi Xian to appear. On a certain street in the imperial capital, Yi Xian came to a noodle shop and sat down. "Boss, give me 2 bowls of noodles and 2 eggs." "Okay." The noodle shop owner answered, then skillfully grabbed a handful of noodles and threw them into the pot of soup. A moment later, 2 bowls of steaming hot noodles were placed in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. 2 bowls? He was about to ask the noodle shop owner, but he seemed to have thought of something and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Yi Xian was silent for a while. Then he said softly, "Ling, I miss you." After saying that, he pushed one of the bowls of noodles to the opposite side and started eating. His sister. She was the most important person in his life. He would always remember one thing. Back then, his sister was only 8 years old. She stood in front of a noodle stall for half an hour just to eat noodles. At that time, he didn't have a single cent helplessness. Heartache. From that moment on, he swore to himself that he would work hard to let his sister live a good life. The Divine Central Continent. On a certain street, a little girl and a beautiful woman were strolling slowly. Passers-by on both sides of the street were looking at them. The little girl was too special. The little girl was about 13 or 14 years old. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of ice. Not only her dress, but even her hair was like ice strips. Her entire body exuded a cold aura that could be felt even from 30 meters away. Apart from that, every time the little girl's feet touched the ground, it would freeze. Who is this little girl? She's so strange. You don't even know her? The Northern Chill Holy Girl is said to be 12th on the monster list. That was 5 days ago. She's now 8th on the monster list. Heavens! How old is she? The youngest monster of the Divine Central Continent. At the end of the street, the little girl suddenly stopped and turned to look at a noodle shop nearby. The little girl walked into the noodle shop and sat down on a chair. As soon as she sat down, the chair instantly froze over. Everyone around looked at the little girl and the beautiful woman. The little girl said indifferently, 2 bowls of noodles and 2 eggs. The owner was still in a daze. The beautiful woman by the little girl's side glanced coldly at the owner. The latter shivered and hurriedly said, Yes, I'll be right there." The little girl withdrew a ring carved from ice and pressed it lightly with her thumb. The ring shook slightly, and it didn't take long for 5 swords to appear on the table. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck when they saw these 5 swords. True rank swords. 5 true rank swords. The little girl gazed at the 5 true rank swords for a short while, and then she turned to look at the beautiful woman by her side. "I must obtain that heaven rank sword." The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment and said, "Holy maiden, you're not a swordsman, so why do you like to collect swords?" The little girl said softly, "Because my older brother is a swordsman. These swords must be given to him." The beautiful woman glanced at the little girl but didn't say anything. The little girl put the swords away and asked, "Is my older brother doing well in Pine Prefecture?" The beautiful woman nodded. "Very well." The little girl nodded slightly, and then she seemed to have thought of something and said coldly, "Is Xueqi Academy still bullying him?" The beautiful woman shook her head. "I don't think so. In short, he's doing well." If anything happens, I'll report it to Holy Maiden. Now, Holy Maiden's top priority is to subdue the divine artifact within your body, attain the myriad Dharma realm, and charge into the top 5 of the monstrous genius rankings. The little girl nodded. I'll work hard. I'll protect my older brother well in the future. The beautiful woman glanced at the little girl and didn't say anything. Meanwhile, a waiter brought over 2 bowls of noodles, and after he placed them on the table, the waiter hurriedly ran away because it was truly too cold. On the other hand, the 2 hot bowls of noodles on the table had instantly frozen. After looking at the 2 bowls of noodles for a very long time, the little girl suddenly said softly, "Brother, I miss you." She would never forget something. One night all those years ago, her older brother had returned with a bowl of steaming noodles, and there was even an egg in the noodles. She was overjoyed at the time, because she'd never eaten noodles before, and she really wanted to eat a bowl of noodles. She asked her older brother to eat with her, and her older brother said he was full. She believed him. That night, her older brother sat in the corner and watched her eat, and every time she looked at her older brother would grin. That year, her older brother was 12 years old. Her mother had just left. To this day, she still didn't know how her older brother got that bowl of noodles. Every time she asked, her older brother would just grin. Qingzhou, Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Yi Xian's noodles were almost finished. At this time, a woman suddenly sat opposite Yi Xian. Yi Xian stopped and faced the woman in front of him. The woman was wearing a black, tight-fitting dress. On the dress was a black phoenix spreading its wings in the sky. The woman smiled and said, "You don't mind, right?" Yi Xian shook his head and continued to lower his head to eat the noodles. The woman ate a mouthful of noodles, then looked at Yi Xian. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Lian Wanli. I changed my name myself. Does it sound nice? King Kaoshan." Yi Xian stopped. He had naturally heard of this name. The name of Great Cloud Empire's King Kaoshan, who didn't know of Great Cloud Realm. The woman took a sip of the soup and shook her head. "It's a bit bland." "What's the matter?" Yi Xian asked. The woman smiled and said, "Nothing, I just came to see you." After saying that, she stood up and looked at Yi Xian. "Your strength is passable, and you're also quite handsome. How about this? Follow me. This king will take you flying." Yi Xian put down his chopsticks. "A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush, do you like me?" Lian Wanli was stunned. Yi Xian said, "Sorry, I already have someone I like." Lian Wanli said seriously, "My palace's imperial doctor is not bad. Do you want to go see him?" Yi Xian, Lian Wanli walked to Yi Xian's side. She gently patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "Now, follow this king back to the palace. Let the imperial doctor take a look at you. Maybe you can still be saved." After saying that, she walked away. In front of the noodle stall, Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then began to eat the noodles. Soon, Yi Xian left. Half an hour later, Yi Xian arrived at Xueqi College. At this moment, Xueqi College was already filled with people. The surrounding roads were blocked so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Yi Xian was speechless. "These people are all here to watch the show?" "Excuse me." Yi Xian squeezed forward. Excuse me. At this moment, the man in front of Yi Xian suddenly turned around and glared at Yi Xian. "What are you squeezing for? You don't want to live anymore?" Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Excuse me, I have something to do." The man said angrily. "Something? Am I fine? Do you know that today is the day my brother-in-law comes to challenge Xueqi College?" Yi Xian was stunned, then asked, "Your brother-in-law is?" The man snorted coldly. "Yi Xian, have you heard of him? Let me tell you, he is my brother-in-law. My sister is already pregnant with his child for 8 months. Yi Xian. Chapter 196. 8 months. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. What the hell was this? Becoming a father? More and more people were crowding around, and there was no space left. In the crowd, Yi Xian felt helpless. He had wanted to keep a low profile, but he had no choice but to leap into the air. In the air, he pointed with his fingers, and a sword landed firmly under his feet. Just like that, he slowly rode the sword into the distance. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Yi Xian. In the air, Yi Xian stood on the sword with his hands behind his back. He looked calm, and his hair fluttered in the wind, looking very elegant. He is Yi Xian. In the field, someone suddenly shouted, Yi Xian. In an instant, the crowd was in an uproar. Yi Xian, the youngest swordmaster of Qingzhou, and could be said to be the most monstrous person in Qingzhou. The elegance of a swordsman. Many people came here not only to watch the show, but also to see the elegance of a swordsman. After all, there were not many powerful swordsmen in Qingzhou. In the crowd, a man looked at Yi Xian in the air with a dumbfounded expression. Bro. Brother-in-law. In the air, Yi Xian's speed on the sword was very slow. It was not that he wanted to be slow, but he could not go fast at all. He had not mastered the sword flight technique at all. His current state could not be considered sword flight at all. But others did not think so. In their eyes, he was slowly flying on the sword. Soon under the crowd's gaze, Yi Xian came to a huge rock at the foot of Xueqi Academy's mountain. He pointed with his right hand, and the sword under his feet turned into a sword light and flew in front of him in a very elegant posture. This move immediately caused the crowd to boil. Too handsome. On the huge rock, Yi Xian turned around and pointed the sword in his hand to the ground. He looked up at Xueqi Academy's mountain. Xueqi Academy, does anyone dare to fight? Does anyone dare to challenge me? The crowd quieted down, and countless people raised their heads to look at Xueqi Academy. How would this superpower of Qingzhou respond? They didn't have to wait too long. Soon, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian, the dean of Xueqi Academy. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at Mu Qingxian. Don't talk nonsense. I'm here to kill, not to listen to your nonsense. With that, he raised his sword and rushed towards Xueqi Academy's mountain. Below, countless people were stunned. How could he be so tough? Mu Qingxuan's face was extremely gloomy. Since the establishment of Xueqi Academy, no one had ever treated them like this. Mu Qingxian suddenly turned around and roared, Yi Xian. As his voice fell, his aura grew weaker and weaker. In an instant, it had fallen to the divine combination realm. Suppressing one's realm. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. This Mu Qingxian was going to take the field personally. In the distance, Yi Xian stopped. He hadn't expected that Mu Qingxian would actually take the field himself. If Mu Qingxian were to forcefully suppress his realm here, then it would mean that it would truly be a battle of life and death. Because Mu Qingxian would absolutely not dare to return to the Dharma realm if he couldn't win. If Mu Qingxian did that, then the reputation of Xueqi Academy that had existed for 1,000 years would be instantly destroyed. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Don't you want to fight? I'll fight you. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. A sharp and ear-piercing sound of something tearing resounded, and then a fist shot straight at Yi Xian's face. The fist contained a peerlessly overbearing and ferocious force that seemed capable of destroying everything. Yi Xian didn't greet this fist head-on. He dodged to the side and avoided it. At the same time, he twisted his wrist, and the spirit elegant sword in his hand slashed horizontally towards Mu Qingxuan's abdomen. Unfortunately, the sword hadn't even reached Mu Qingxuan's abdomen when a hand grabbed it. Mu Qingxuan's left hand. His 5 fingers gripped Yi Xian's sword tightly. Yi Xian's sword seemed to be welded, and it couldn't move at all. In the blink of an eye, Mu Qingxuan's left hand slid forward. His fist slammed into Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated 200 feet. The surroundings quietened down. After repelling Yi Xian with a single strike, Mu Qingxian didn't attack again. He lowered his head and looked at his arm. There was a shallow sword mark there. At the last moment, when he sent Yi Xian flying with his fist, Yi Xian's sword had also slashed across his arm. It could be said that he only had a slight advantage in this confrontation. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away, with a solemn expression in his eyes. The exchange just now had allowed him to understand one thing, and that was that no one in the younger generation of Xueqi Academy could contend against Yi Xian. It should be said that there were very few people in the younger generation of Qingzhou who could contend against Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian rubbed his abdomen. At this moment, he was somewhat astonished. Because at the critical moment just now, He had used the kindness sword intent to protect the crucial part of his abdomen. Originally, he had merely wanted to counteract Mu Qingxuan's power, but he discovered that if he gathered the kindness sword intent in one place, it was actually equivalent to a piece of armor, and this armor was even more useful than his armor of the earth. Mu Qingxuan's punch just now hadn't injured him at all, and he had only been shaken for a moment. This discovery made Yi Xian extremely pleasantly surprised. So the kindness sword intent could be used in this way. Or perhaps it should be said that the kindness sword intent was actually a way of defense, because he discovered that the kindness sword intent's lethality wasn't that great. On the contrary, it was very useful in the aspect of defense. Quickly fight! Someone suddenly shouted from the crowd below. Everyone was speechless. Mu Qingxian glanced at Yi Xian. Come, let me see how monstrous you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flew to a boulder that was dozens of feet tall beside him. He abruptly kicked the boulder, and the boulder instantly flew out and smashed towards Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he took a swift step forward and stabbed with his sword. It was a simple and direct strike. Hiss! The boulder was instantly split into two, but Yi Xian's sword was forcefully stopped because two fingers had clamped down on the tip of his sword. After clamping down on Yi Xian's sword, Mu Qingxian was about to attack when a flying sword suddenly slashed out from within Yi Xian's body. Mu Qingxuan's pupils constricted slightly, and he put his right hand together and flicked. Bang! The flying sword was slashed away, but another flying sword slashed over. Mu Qingxian tapped the tip of his foot lightly, and his entire body floated backward. However, the flying sword was still in front of him, and it was only a few inches away from his forehead. At this moment, he could clearly feel the sword light emitted by Yi Xian's flying sword. It was sharp and piercing. Mu Qingxian suddenly tilted his head and dodged the flying sword by a hair's breadth. However, another flying sword appeared in front of him. Mu Qingxian instantly retreated a few meters, but he quickly sprinted forward and punched out. Bang! He punched out, and the powerful force emitted from his fist forcibly blocked the 7 flying swords in front of him. However, it was unable to repel the 7 flying swords. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was riding his sword in the distance, suddenly rushed toward Mu Qingxian like a gust of wind. He held the spirit elegant sword, and within the sword, a wave of sword force was increasing at a terrifying speed. Gathering force. When Yi Xian was only a few meters away from Mu Qingxian, the sword force contained within the spirit elegant sword in Yi Xian's hand had far exceeded the force that a divine combination realm expert should have. Mu Qingxuan's expression became even more serious when he saw this scene. It should be said that it had changed from serious to fearful. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. In the next moment, he held the sword with both hands and slashed down from above Mu Qingxuan's head. One sword to decide life and death. The moment Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the sword force instantly increased by several times. At this moment, the force contained within this sword was already approaching the myriad Dharma realm. Yi Xian hadn't reached the myriad Dharma realm, but this sword was approaching the myriad Dharma realm. Below, a trace of savagery flashed in Mu Qingxuan's eyes. His right foot swept backwards and he put his palms together. In an instant, the aura around his body surged. However, it hadn't recovered to the myriad Dharma realm. He was executing a powerful martial technique. When Yi Xian's sword was about 10 inches away from Mu Qingxuan's head, Mu Qingxian suddenly stomped on the ground with his right foot. He put his palms together and pushed upwards. Void obliteration. As soon as he said this, the top of Mu Qingxuan's head turned pitch black, and the sword light emitted by Yi Xian's sword disappeared without a trace. Not only that, but the pitch-black darkness was also spreading towards Yi Xian at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian had been devoured. The surroundings quietened down. Everyone looked into the distance. Yi Xian died just like that? One breath later. Boom! A terrifying white stream of air suddenly erupted from the pitch-black darkness. Kindness sword intent. This kindness sword intent actually began to devour the pitch-black darkness. At the same time, a sword light slashed down from the white stream of air. Bang! Under the gazes of countless people, Mu Qingxian was instantly blasted hundreds of feet away. Only when he crashed into a mountain wall did he stop. The mountain wall behind him violently trembled and directly cracked. Everyone turned their heads to the right. The pitch-black space had returned to normal. there stood a man holding a long sword. The man's body emitted a white mist. Materialized sword intent. Yi Xian. Numerous people looked at each other in disdain. Did Yi Xian win? Yi Xian carried his sword and walked towards Mu Qingxian in the distance. At this moment, blood constantly flowed from the corner of Mu Qingshuan's mouth. There were more than a dozen sword wounds on his body. Each of them was extremely deep and injured his insides. Seriously injured. Mu Qingxian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at Yi Xian. What an overbearing sword technique. What a strong sword intent. Materialized sword intent. What kind of sword intent is this? Yi Xian stopped several feet away from Mu Qingxian. He pointed his sword at Mu Qingxian. Restore the 10,000 Dharma realm. Restore the 10,000 Dharma realm. Everyone was stunned. What did Yi Xian want to do? Was he courting death? It must be known that Yi Xian was only at the ethereal opening realm. Mu Qingxian stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said again, "Don't worry. The world will not say that your Karaki Academy is bullying the weak, nor will they say that you are greedy for life and afraid of death. They will not say that your Karaki Academy is shameless. It should not affect your Karaki Academy's 1,000-year reputation. Come, don't have any worries. Quickly restore to the 10,000 Dharma realm." Everyone. P.S. I borrowed a wireless update from the roadside. I ran 3 streets before I found a wireless update that didn't require a password. Chapter 197. He had recovered to the Dharma realm. Everyone present looked at Mu Qingxian. Would Mu Qingxian recover to the Dharma realm? Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian while blood flowed incessantly from the corners of his mouth. He was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly raised his sword and charged at him. Yi Xian was extremely swift, and he arrived in front of Mu Qingxian in the blink of an eye. Then, a sword was pointed straight at Mu Qingshuan's forehead. It was extremely swift, like a white steed flashing past a crack. Mu Qingshuan's pupils constricted slightly, and he suddenly pressed his hands together in front of him. Bang! Mu Qingshuan's palms forcefully pressed against Yi Xian's spirit-elegant sword, but the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked open. At the same time, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him from the side like a bolt of lightning. Mu Qingshuan's expression changed drastically. He spread his hands apart, and then he pressed them forward. A powerful force poured out from his palms. Bang! Yi Xian's flying sword was forcefully blocked by this force. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up lightly and slashed down with his sword. Mu Qingshuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a wisp of ferocity in them. At this moment, he had nowhere to retreat because the mountain wall was right behind him. There was no way out. Mu Qingxian suddenly squatted down, and the ground beneath his feet that had already cracked open instantly exploded apart. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly rose up from the ground, and his fist met Yi Xian's sword. When his fist was around 10 inches away from Yi Xian's sword, his fist suddenly spun. Hiss! The sound of air exploding suddenly resounded. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword descended. Bang! Mu Qingshuan's fist forcefully blocked Yi Xian's sword, but his feet were still squatting down. Moreover, the mountain wall behind him was cracking layer by layer, and the cracks were spreading towards the surroundings at an extremely fast speed. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. Countless elders and students stared fixedly at the mountain wall, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In midair, Yi Xian held his sword with both hands and suddenly pressed it downwards. The spirit-elegant sword directly broke through the light on Mu Qingshuan's fist, and the sword descended straight down. Chi! Mu Qingshuan's entire right arm was instantly cut off, but Mu Qingxian clenched his left hand into a fist and punched Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian's entire body flew in a circle in the air before crashing to the ground. Where he landed, the ground instantly exploded. However, it didn't take long for him to crawl back up. After that, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and pointed forward. Chi! A flying sword flew past and headed straight for the distant Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian rushed forward and punched with his left hand. Bang! The flying sword was instantly blasted away, but after this flying sword, there were 6 sword lights. Mu Qingshuan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He pointed a finger at his forehead, and in an instant, a powerful aura swept out of his body. This aura was close to the Dharma boundary, but it was not the Dharma boundary. Even he couldn't bring forth the strength of the Dharma boundary while at the divine combination realm. Under the gazes of everyone, Mu Qingxian took a step forward and pointed a finger forward. Space actually became slightly illusory where his fingertip descended, and Yi Xian's 6 swords were forcefully stopped and couldn't move an inch forward. However, Mu Qingxuan's entire body trembled violently. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly pointed a finger at himself, and the 6 swords transformed into 6 rays of light that flew back into the sword chest on his back. A moment of silence ensued. OM! A sword howl suddenly resounded, and in the blink of an eye, 7 rays of light suddenly shot into the sky from behind Yi Xian. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian took a step forward and pointed his right hand at Mu Qingxian. In the sky, the 7 swords shot down like 7 bolts of lightning. Mu Qingxian looked up from below, and his eyes were filled with madness. At this point, he had no way out, and he could only fight with his life on the line. The swords hadn't descended when Mu Qingxian suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and his figure shot into the sky to greet the swords. In midair, he slapped his palm forward, and the entire sky instantly became slightly illusory. This palm strike was comparable to the Dharma boundary. It could be said that it was similar to Yi Xian's attack from before, and it had attained the limits of the divine combination realm. Bang! In midair, the 7 swords were forced to a stop by a powerful force, and the light on them vanished at this moment. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged over with his sword in hand and slashed. Bang! Mu Qingxian was blasted flying. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when countless people obstructed him. Besides the instructors and elders of Xueqi Academy, countless students of Xueqi Academy surrounded Yi Xian. A wave of hissing instantly resounded from the crowd below when they witnessed this scene. A one-on-one battle. Yi Xian and Mu Qingxian were fighting one-on-one, and Mu Qingxian was a realm higher than Yi Xian. Under such circumstances, Xueqi Academy actually wanted to gang up on him. Shameless. Too shameless. The expressions of the elders, instructors, and students of Xueqi Academy instantly turned unsightly. Not far away, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. What are all of you trying to do? As he spoke, he looked at Mu Qingxian. Dean Mu, if you can't beat him, then just say it. I absolutely won't kill you. There's no need for so many people to surround me. Pooh. Mu Qingxian spat out a mouthful of blood, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Besides resentment, there was also a complicated look in his eyes. At this moment, he finally witnessed how terrifying Yi Xian was. After all, Yi Xian was only at the Nether Passage realm now. If Yi Xian reached the divine combination realm, at that time, it was very likely that Yi Xian would be able to fight against the Dharma boundary. Too monstrous. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, Dean Mu, in the end, do you want to fight one-on-one or gang up on me? Just say it. One-on-one. A voice suddenly resounded from the crowd below. One-on-one. Soon, more and more voices resounded. Yi Xian suddenly faced the crowd below, and his left hand lightly pressed down. Everyone immediately quieted down. Yi Xian smiled and said, Let me introduce myself. I'm Yi Xian, the Dean of Blue Waves Academy, nicknamed the most handsome man of Jiang country. Hearing this, countless people below couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yi Xian pointed his sword at the students of Xueqi Academy. Xueqi Academy, is there anyone who wants to fight? Yi Xian. A student of Xueqi Academy stood up, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You? Whoosh! The sound of breaking air resounded, and this student's voice came to an abrupt stop, because a sword had unknowingly pierced his throat. In an instant, the surroundings became quiet. Yi Xian lightly moved his finger, and the sword in the throat of that student immediately flew back to him. He took out a white silk handkerchief and gently wiped the blood on the sword. I came to kill, not to chat. Finished speaking, he looked at the students of Xueqi Academy not far away. Next. Those students of Xueqi Academy stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and each and every one of them had an ashen complexion, but no one dared to move. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head and smiled, then he looked at Mu Qingxian not far away. Dean Mu, isn't your Xueqi Academy trying every means possible to get rid of me? Now, I am standing in front of you, but why are you all so cowardly? Yi Xian. A student suddenly stood up, and he glared at Yi Xian. "Don't go too far, my Karaki Academy." At this time, Yi Xian held the sword in his right hand and swung it to the right. Chi! More than 10 zhang away, the head of the student of Karaki Academy instantly flew. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the spiritual beauty sword flew back into his palm. Holding the sword, he pointed it at the students from Karaki Academy, who were extremely enraged. "Going too far? Today I will go too far. I won't talk nonsense with you. Come, all of you under the 10,000 laws realm of Karaki Academy, come at me together. I will fight all of you alone." As soon as he said this, the crowd immediately went into an uproar. One must know that there were over 1,000 students of Karaki Academy. One person against 1,000? Was Yi Xian crazy? And when those Karaki Academy students heard Yi Xian's words, their faces instantly turned purple from anger. At this time, how could they still endure? Soon, the students dashed towards Yi Xian one after another. Yi Xian grinned, and the sword sheath on his back violently trembled. In an instant, 7 swords suddenly flew out, and in an instant, 7 Karaki Academy students were pierced through the chests by these 7 swords, and they fell to the ground on the spot. "Stay your hand." Mu Qingxuan's voice suddenly resounded, and the students of Karaki Academy stopped successively. However, Yi Xian didn't stop at all. He held his sword in hand as he charged at them, and everywhere he passed, the students of Karaki Academy fell to the ground. "How presumptuous!" Mu Qingxian suddenly roared furiously. In an instant, he'd vanished on the spot, and he was in front of Yi Xian when his figure appeared once more. However, Yi Xian grinned instead. Mu Qingxuan's expression changed drastically when he saw Yi Xian's smile, and he was just about to recover his cultivation. However, it was slightly too late. Unknowingly, 12 golden men had appeared around him. The 12 golden figures attacked in unison. At the same time, a strand of light flashed. A single strike to decide life and death. The expressions of the myriad laws realm experts of Karaki Academy changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they were just about to attack. However, the 12 golden figures had already retreated behind Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword had stabbed into the center of Mu Qingxuan's forehead. The surroundings fell silent once more. That's it? That's it? The minds of all the instructors and students of Karaki Academy had gone blank. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at Yi Xian and grinned. "You've been waiting for this moment for a long time, right? Do you think it's over now? No. This is just the beginning. Yi Xian, even if I die, there are still countless Mu Qingxuans in the headquarters. You." Meanwhile, Yi Xian raised his sword and slashed forward. Hiss! The sword pierced through Mu Qingxuan's head, and Mu Qingxuan's voice stopped abruptly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Qingxian and shook his head. "Countless Mu Qingxuans? I'm so scared." As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed with a sword in his hand. Hiss! Mu Qingxuan's head instantly flew into the air. The surroundings were completely silent. Yi Xian flicked the spirit elegant sword lightly, and Mu Qingxuan's spatial ring instantly flew to him. He didn't look at it and just put it away. After that, he looked up at the instructors and students of Karaki Academy. "You haven't had your fill of killing, and you still want to kill? What do you think I should do?" Everyone was speechless. End of this chapter. Chapter 198. He hasn't had his fill yet. He still wants to kill. The surroundings were deathly silent as everyone looked at Yi Xian. Does Yi Xian really want to challenge the entire Karaki Academy by himself? Halfway up the mountain, a woman was sitting on a tree branch, her smooth jade-like feet swinging gently. The corners of the woman's mouth curled up slightly as she gazed at Yi Xian. He hasn't had his fill yet, he still wants to kill. A man should be like this. Behind the woman was an armored woman who wore a sword. She glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. The woman seemed to have thought of something, and she suddenly turned around to look at the armored woman behind her and said with a smile, "Ah, Zua, compared to him, whose sword Dao is superior?" The armored woman lowered her head slightly and didn't speak. The woman grinned as she turned around to look down, and then she lightly twirled a strand of her beautiful hair in her hand. "Everyone in the world says that Yi Xian is the youngest swordmaster of my Pine Prefecture. Actually, Zua, you're the youngest swordmaster of my Pine Prefecture." A sword master being a guard by my side is such a waste of talent. The armored woman's expression changed slightly when she heard this, and then she suddenly knelt down on one knee. My king, Ahizwa is willing to follow you for eternity. The woman smiled and said, Stand up. Let's see how this farce will end with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at Yi Xian with a faint smile on her face. Below, Yi Xian stood in confrontation with over 1,000 Karaki Academy students with his sword in hand. Meanwhile, an elder of Karaki Academy walked over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian, why do you have to be so ruthless? Ruthless? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. I should be the one asking you, Karaki Academy. Since the beginning until now, how many times has your Karaki Academy pursued me? Have you counted? The elder was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Cut the crap. Either all of you die, or I die. I won't stop until I'm dead. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and charged towards the students of Karaki Academy. The expressions of those students from Karaki Academy turned grim when they saw Yi Xian attack, but they didn't flee, and they charged towards Yi Xian instead. 1 person against 1,000. Seeing that Yi Xian was really going to fight 1,000 people alone, countless people below were dumbfounded. 1,000. As for these Karaki Academy students, were they all ordinary trash? Obviously not. They were the elites of Great Cloud Empire. Of course, regardless of whether he could win or not, countless people here still admired Yi Xian very much. Because Yi Xian dared to hit them. In the crowd, Yi Xian wielded the spirit gray sword and slashed continuously. Every time he slashed, a Karaki college student would fall. Although these Karaki Academy students were elites, none of them could take a single blow from Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian didn't have it easy either, because every time he killed one, another would immediately charge at him. At this moment, he had some injuries on his body. Fortunately, he had the protection of the kindness sword intent. Otherwise, his situation would be even more serious. As for the 12 golden men, he didn't want to use them for the time being. He only had less than 1 million supreme-grade spirit stones, which meant that he could only activate them once at most. This time, he had to save them for the critical moment. Kill. In the crowd, Yi Xian had gone crazy. He had killed 50 to 60 people since the beginning. All of them were killed with a single strike. None of the 10,000 Laws Realm experts from Karaki Academy made a move. They could only watch as Yi Xian slaughtered the students of Karaki Academy. Sword Immortal. Everyone in the world knew that there was a sword immortal behind Yi Xian, and this sword immortal was very protective of his people. After all, there was still a sword and a head nailed to the righteous hall of Karaki Academy. Helplessness. Confusion. This was the mood of the 10,000 Laws Realm experts of Karaki Academy at this moment. If the few of them made a move, they would definitely be able to kill Yi Xian. However, they just couldn't. And if they didn't make a move, Yi Xian might really kill all of the younger generation of Karaki Academy if things went on like this. At that time, Karaki Academy would really exist in name only. Bang! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly flew out heavily. After flying for more than a dozen feet, he crashed to the ground. He had just gotten up when more than a dozen Karaki Academy students had already rushed in front of him. At this moment, these students were also in a killing frenzy. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Chi! 2 rays of sword light shot out from his eyes like 2 thunderbolts, and the dozen Karaki Academy students who had just rushed in front of him were instantly killed by these 2 rays of sword light. But soon, more than a dozen people rushed up. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, raised his sword, and rushed up. Kill. At this moment, there was only one thought in Yi Xian's mind, and that was to kill. At this moment, a man in black suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian, and Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Bang! The man in black was directly slashed in half, and blood splattered. However, another man in black had suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. Chi! A dagger stabbed into the back of Yi Xian's neck, but it was blocked by Yi Xian's goodwill sword intent. However, a few more rays of cold light quietly appeared around Yi Xian, and these cold lights were aimed at his various vital points. At this critical moment, the sword box behind Yi Xian suddenly trembled violently, and in an instant, 7 rays of sword light shook from within the sword box. Bang! 6 men in black were instantly blasted away by more than a dozen feet. But soon, These 6 men in black disappeared on the spot. Yi Xian frowned deeply, and just as he was about to attack, a petite figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was stunned. Little Demon Tuoba. Little Demon Tuoba grinned. Swordsman, your horse. With that said, she pointed below, and there stood a black flame horse. Yi Xian was about to say something, but Little Demon Tuoba suddenly turned around and swung her hammer down. Bang! A Karaki College student was instantly sent flying. Little Demon Tuoba looked around, and she spat at the crowd. Tui, so many people attacking one person. Shameless. With that said, she leaped and smashed down with her hammer. Bang! The entire ground shook violently, and more than 30 Karaki College students were sent flying. Yi Xian hurriedly came to Little Demon Tuoba's side, and he pulled her sleeve. What are you doing here? Little Demon Tuoba rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. I'm here to help you fight, of course. Yi Xian said in a low voice. This is my business. Don't get involved. Little Demon Tuoba thought for a moment, and then she said, My father said that when we're outside, we must be loyal. Do you know what loyalty means? Loyalty is, I won't say it. In any case, you know what it means, right? Yi Xian was speechless. Little Demon Tuoba moved closer to Yi Xian, and then she asked in an extremely serious manner, I'm very loyal, right? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Little Demon, Karaki College and Dark World are very powerful in the Central Divine Continent. If you get involved, you might implicate your family. Little Demon Tuoba waved her hand, and she didn't seem to care at all. Don't worry, my father is very good at fighting, my uncle is very good at fighting, and my third uncle is not bad as well. Yi Xian intended to say something else, but Little Demon Tuoba suddenly patted him on the shoulder. My father always said that a man will die for those who understand him. Even though I can't die for you, I can still help you fight. As soon as she finished speaking, she glanced at the surroundings while holding the hammer in her hand. I'm Little Demon Tuoba. My father is very good at fighting, my uncle is very good at fighting, and my third uncle is very formidable as well. Don't worry, Little Demon Tuoba, don't rely on my father. If I can't defeat all of you, then I absolutely won't call myself my father. Of course, if my father himself comes to fight all of you, then it's none of my business. All of them were speechless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He didn't attack again, and he started walking up the mountain instead. Little Demon Tuoba glanced at the others in the surroundings, and then she said seriously, My father is really very good at fighting. As soon as she finished speaking, she quickly followed behind Yi Xian. As they watched Yi Xian and Little Demon Tuoba walk up the mountain, all the students of Karaki College had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. However, none of them dared to attack. None of the 10,000 Dharma Realm experts dared to stop them either. Just like that, Yi Xian and Little Demon Tuoba arrived at Karaki College's mountain without a hitch. Yi Xian and Little Demon Tuoba passed through several halls and finally arrived in front of Karaki College's Noble Hall. As he stood in front of the Noble Hall, Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the horizontal board above the Noble Hall. On the board was a sword condensed from tree leaves, and there was a head impaled on the sword. Tree leaf sword. Yi Xian grinned. With a light tap of his feet, his entire body flew into the air. Very quickly, he grabbed the leaf sword. It was ice cold to the touch. Yi Xian pulled out the tree leaf sword and landed steadily on the ground. However, he frowned deeply. This was because he realized that there was nothing special about this tree leaf sword. It was just a simple tree leaf. What was going on? Wasn't this a divine weapon? Yi Xian was a little confused. At that moment, he truly felt that this sword was just a tree leaf. There was nothing special about it. It was not even comparable to an ordinary sword. If he was given time, he could even make a tree leaf sword like this. It was a sword condensed from tree leaves. Yi Xian held the tree leaf sword and stood rooted to the spot. At that moment, Yi Xian was petrified and did not say a word. Countless Karaki College students surrounded them, but no one dared to make a move. Little Demon Tuoba swung the small nail hammer in his hand and constantly sized up the Karaki College students with an unfriendly expression. Just like that, after a stalemate of about 15 minutes, Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Little Demon Tuoba looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. I understand. Little Demon Tuoba blinked. Understand what? Yi Xian chuckled. Sword Immortal Sister wants to tell me a principle. Swordsman, if a person is strong, even if he is holding a tree branch, he can still destroy the world. Talent is the foundation. Just as he finished speaking, the tree leaf sword in his hand suddenly transformed into a sword beam and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the tree leaf sword disappeared over the horizon. The country of Jiang. Leaves suddenly appeared on countless barren trees. Central Plains, Xueqi College. After the tree leaf sword disappeared, Yi Xian's heart warmed. This was because Sword Immortal Sister was not only teaching him Sword Dao, but also many other principles. Reigning in his thoughts, Yi Xian turned to face the Xueqi College students. Just as he was about to attack, he seemed to think of something and suddenly turned to Little Demon Tuoba. Little Demon, go to Xueqi College's treasury. Take whatever you see. Take everything that's valuable. Little Demon Tuoba blinked. I'm a little embarrassed. Yi Xian was about to console him when Little Demon Tuoba turned and ran to Xueqi College's treasury. Yi Xian was speechless. Was this what you meant by embarrassed? Yi Xian. At this moment, a nearby 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouse from Xueqi College glared at him. Don't go too far. I'm going too far. Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouse. You don't like it? Hit me if you don't like it. The 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouse was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He suddenly turned to look at the other 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses beside him and roared, You've already bullied us to this extent. What are you still holding back? Let's join forces and fight to the death with him. At worst, we'll just die. Fight to the death. Countless Xueqi College students roared in unison. The other 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses also looked at each other with determination in their eyes. Kill him. At this moment, a 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouse suddenly roared. The next moment, all the people from Xueqi College were about to attack. At this moment, all the people from Xueqi College, whether they were mentors, elders or students, were ready to fight to the death. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. Master? You're here? In an instant, everyone from Xueqi College stopped. P.S. How many readers have formed the habit of opening it before 9 every day to see Sword Venerable? If there are, leave a message. I want to see if there are any familiar faces. Familiar faces from the beginning of Sword Domain until now. If there are, I'll reply you. I've been writing books for 3 or 4 years, punctually at 8 or 9. I don't need to be popular, but I want to have a clear conscience. Love you all. Leave the most handsome blue phoenix. Chapter 199. Master. In the field, the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses from Xueqi College looked up, their faces full of dread, or rather fear. Sword Immortal. In the land of Qingzhou, a sword immortal was enough to sweep away everything. Especially at this moment, with Mu Qingxuan's death, the current Xueqi College simply could not compete with a sword immortal. A sword immortal was enough to destroy them all. Not far away, Yi Xian raised his head and listened. After a moment he suddenly shook his head. No, master, you don't have to do anything, disciple can deal with these people myself. After saying that, he raised his ear a little more, as if listening to something. After a moment, Yi Xian shook his head again. Master, if you do everything, how can disciple grow? Don't worry about this matter for now. Disciple can deal with it myself. What? 10,000 Dharma Realm? No, the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses have not made a move yet. If they do, you can do it. How about it? Hearing Yi Xian's words, the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses from Xueqi College suddenly looked ugly. 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses. Wasn't this referring to them? At this moment, Yi Xian bowed deeply to the sky. Master, rest assured, as long as the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses do not come, disciple will not call you. However, if the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses come, disciple can only ask you to help. Everyone. Yi Xian looked up at the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses. You guys, did you just say that you want to fight to the death? One of the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouses said fiercely. Yi Xian, do you think your master can scare us? Yi Xian smiled. Scare you? No. I really hope that you can help, really, as long as you do it my master will definitely help, And then, your Karaki college can be easily destroyed. For me personally, it is really a great thing. After saying that, he walked in front of the 10,000 Dharma Realm powerhouse. Come, hit me, hurry, I promise not to fight back. The myriad law realm expert's eyes were red with anger. He was about to attack, but he was stopped by a few people next to him. Among the people who stopped him, an old man said in a deep voice, "Don't fall for it. This person is intentionally provoking you, wanting you to make a move. Once you make a move, you will fall into his trap." The rest of the people nodded their heads in agreement. The Dharma Realm powerhouse stared at Yi Xian with bloodshot eyes and undisguised killing intent. Yi Xian took 2 more steps forward. "Kill me. Come on. Come here." Hearing that, the Dharma Realm powerhouse almost went berserk, but he was stopped by the others. Yi Xian didn't say anything else. He shrugged and retreated to the side. It could be seen that if he continued to provoke him, things might really go south. At that moment, Tuoba came out. Little Tuoba skipped over to Yi Xian and said excitedly, "Do you know how many gold coins there are?" Yi Xian shook his head. Little Demon Tuoba glared at Yi Xian. "Guess, hurry up and guess." Yi Xian was speechless. How was she supposed to guess? Little Demon Tuoba suddenly raised his hand and slapped Yi Xian's shoulder. Then, he excitedly raised 2 or 3 fingers and said, "That's a total of 3 billion gold coins. And a total of 26 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 26 million. As she said that, she approached Yi Xian and smiled strangely. "Guess what else?" Yi Xian shook his head. A spirit stone suddenly appeared in little monster Tuoba's hand. It was not a top-grade spirit stone, but a jade-grade spirit stone. Little Demon Tuoba grinned. A total of 1,300 jade-grade spirit stones. As she said that, she hugged Yi Xian and planted a fierce kiss on Yi Xian's cheek. I'm rich, haha." Yi Xian. At the side, the expressions of the Karaki Academy students were as ugly as could be. This was robbing Karaki Academy right in front of them. After Little Demon Tuoba rejoiced for a while, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Did I kiss you just now?" Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No. Little Demon Tuoba stared straight at Yi Xian. "I kissed you. I'm very sure." Yi Xian thought about it and then approached Little Demon Tuoba and kissed her little cheek. "All right, we're even." Little Demon Tuoba was stunned on the spot. She touched her cheek that Yi Xian had kissed. "You kissed me?" Yi Xian nodded. "You kissed me just now as well. We didn't lose out. What do you think?" Little Demon Tuoba thought about it and then nodded. "That seems to be true." As she said that, she looked around. "What do we do now?" "What do we do?" Before Yi Xian could speak, the Karaki Academy students had already surrounded the 2 of them. Little Demon Tuoba pointed at the Karaki Academy students one by one. Moments later, she looked at Yi Xian. "I counted. There are still over 800 people. I can fight 300. Can you handle the remaining 500? Yi Xian thought about it and then said, "It's a little difficult." Little Demon Tuoba thought about it and then said, "Then give me another 100. I can fight 400. But I might not be able to win." Yi Xian asked, "How confident are you?" Little Demon Tuoba said, "Less than 90%. 90%. Yi Xian looked at Little Demon Tuoba and said with astonishment, "Less than 90%? Little Demon Tuoba nodded. "I'm not 100% confident." As she spoke, she gazed at Yi Xian. "My dad said that it's best not to do something that I'm not 100% confident in. But I'm willing to take a risk for you." Yi Xian spoke seriously. "I'm very touched. I really am." Little Demon Tuoba blinked. "Then why aren't you crying?" "I would cry when I'm touched." Yi Xian was speechless. Little Demon Tuoba wanted to say something else. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Why don't we start fighting? We can't let them wait for us for too long." Little Demon Tuoba nodded, and then she turned around to look at the Karaki Academy students. "I'm not lying to all of you. All of you will die if I hit you with my hammer." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly smashed the hammer against the ground. Bang! The ground in front of her instantly cracked open, and the crack spread extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, they had spread to the group of Xueqi Academy students. Their expressions changed drastically, and they retreated explosively. Meanwhile, little demon Tuoba smashed the hammer against the ground once more. Bang! The ground beneath the group of Xueqi Academy students in the distance instantly cracked open, and a few dozen of them were blasted flying. At the instant that they were blasted flying, 7 of them were instantly pierced through the chests by 7 swords, and they perished on the spot. Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba were just about to attack again when a strand of formidable pressure suddenly enveloped them, causing their expressions to change drastically. Yi Xian hurriedly pulled little demon Tuoba behind him, and then the kindness sword intent swept out from within him to form a thick barrier in front of him. Bang! The kindness sword intent barrier collapsed in an instant, and then little demon Tuoba and Yi Xian were instantly blasted 300 m away. As soon as they stopped moving, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth, and it flowed incessantly while the clothes on his chest were instantly dyed red with blood. On the other hand, a middle-aged man had suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba. The middle-aged man wore an embroidered and luxurious robe, and an ancient tree was embroidered on the robe. There were numerous white clouds around the top of the tree. Moreover, there were 3 large golden words on the left side of his chest. Left Academy Emissary. Left Academy Emissary. The expressions of the instructors and elders of Xueqi Academy changed drastically when they saw these 3 words, and then all of them arrived before the middle-aged man and bowed deeply. Greetings, Left Academy Emissary. Left Academy Emissary. He was the true second in command of Xueqi Academy's headquarters. In Xueqi Academy's headquarters, the highest authority was naturally the dean, and beneath the dean were the left and right academy emissaries. They were the true figures that held true authority in Xueqi Academy's headquarters. The left academy emissary glanced at everyone here and spoke indifferently. Is Mu Qingxian here? One of the Xueqi Academy elders had a downcast expression. Dean Mu has perished. The left academy emissary frowned slightly. Has that sword immortal woman already taken action? The elder shook his head. Not that sword immortal, but that Yi Xian. Dean Mu lowered his realm to fight Yi Xian, and in the end, when he heard this, the left academy emissary's gaze fell on Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian. A sword master who isn't even 20 years old. Your talent is rare, even in the central divine continent. Little demon Tuoba stood in front of Yi Xian and looked coldly at the left academy emissary. Tui! You shameless bastard! How dare you bully the weak? The left academy emissary glanced at little demon Tuoba. Tuoba family. Fine, I'll give your Tuoba family some face. With that, he waved his right hand lightly. Little demon Tuoba, who was nearby, was immobilized by a force. She quickly floated to the side. The left academy emissary glanced at the Xueqi Academy elder. Take her to the side. Don't hurt her. The elder nodded and hurriedly took little demon Tuoba to the side. During this time, little demon Tuoba could not move at all. The left academy emissary looked at Yi Xian and slowly walked to a spot several dozen feet in front of Yi Xian. Today, we shall settle the grudge between you and my Xueqi Academy. Of course, I didn't come here for you. You don't have the honor to make me come here personally. With that said, he slowly clenched his right hand. Have your master come out. As his voice fell, a thin old man appeared behind him. The old man's back was slightly hunched and he held a black walking stick in his hand. Around the walking stick, there were 3 strands of black air currents. At the top of the walking stick there was an eye that was moving. The thin elder glanced at Yi Xian and grinned. His smile was somewhat sinister. I heard that your master is very good at fighting. We want to spar with her. With that said, 11 people suddenly appeared behind him. These 11 people were all dressed in black robes and black felt hats. They held long staffs in their hands. Including the left academy emissary, there were a total of 13 people. These 13 people were unfathomable, like the vast starry sky. Yi Xian was silent. This time they were not here for him. They were here for Sister Sword Celestial. Sister Sword Celestial, they're here for you, not me. Yi Xian said softly in his heart. He had thought that there would be no response. However, a long-lost voice suddenly sounded in his mind. I really want to destroy your world with my sword. It's so annoying to watch. Yi Xian. At this moment, the Left Academy emissary suddenly said calmly. Why? You don't dare to come out? Chapter 200. Afraid to come out? Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. He knew that the Left Academy emissary and the others were very, very strong, so strong that it exceeded his current understanding. But he also knew that the sword immortal sister inside him was even stronger. There was no basis for it. It was just an intuition. His intuition told him that the sword immortal sister was not joking when she said that she could destroy the world with a single strike. She might really be able to do it, even though he felt that destroying a world with a single strike was absurd. Who was the sword immortal sister? How strong was she? That was what Yi Xian had always wanted to know. Opposite Yi Xian, the Left Academy emissary said indifferently, What? You're a mighty sword immortal. Are you going to be a coward? The mysterious woman still did not come out. Something was not right. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He knew that the mysterious woman had a bad temper. Under normal circumstances, she should have already come out. But now, she had not come out despite the Left Academy emissary's insults. It was very strange. Yi Xian was about to ask when the mysterious woman's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Let me think about it. Think about what? Yi Xian asked instinctively. Think about whether I should destroy your world with a single strike. Yi Xian. The Left Academy emissary frowned impatiently when he saw that the mysterious woman still had not appeared. He was about to speak when an old man suddenly appeared. The old man wore a loose robe, and his hair and beard were all white. A trace of seriousness appeared in the Left Academy emissary's eyes when he saw the old man. World Protector. In the firmament world, each of the 3 prefectures was protected by a group of mysterious people. These mysterious people were the World Protectors. This was an extremely mysterious power. Let alone Xueqi Academy, even some of the superpowers of the Central Divine Prefecture didn't dare to offend them. Their duty was to protect the states. The old man glanced coldly at the Left Academy emissary. So many people have come here. Do you want to completely destroy Azure Prefecture? The Left Academy emissary smiled slightly. How could that be? It's just killing a sword immortal. It's not to that extent. The old man said indifferently, No matter who you want to kill, coming here with your strength is already against the rules. The minister of the left pondered for a moment. After a moment, he flicked his finger and a storage ring flew in front of the old man. Please make an exception. The old man glanced at the storage ring. There were 1,000 purple crystals the size of fists inside. Violet origin crystal. This was an extremely precious item. A single purple Genesis crystal was equivalent to 100,000 top-grade spirit stones. Most importantly, it was relatively difficult to obtain. Hence, under normal circumstances, 100,000 top-grade spirit stones would not even be enough to exchange for a single purple Genesis crystal. Top-grade spirit stones and jade-grade spirit stones were useful for martial artists under the 10,000 Dharma boundary. But they were not very useful for experts in the 10,000 Dharma boundary and above. The purple origin crystal could satisfy experts of the Dharma controlling realm and above. 1,000 purple Genesis crystals could be said to be a very large sum. After a moment of silence, the old man glanced at the left dean. Don't make too much noise. With that, he put away the storage ring, turned around, and disappeared into the horizon. After the realm protector left, the left dean's gaze once again fell on Yi Xian. Are you sure she won't come out? Yi Xian said seriously. My master is already on his way. You can wait for a moment. The left dean frowned slightly. On his way? From where? Yi Xian pointed to the sky. From above. The left dean turned and exchanged a glance with the skinny old man behind him. The skinny old man said in a low voice. Left dean, are you sure that person is just a sword immortal without any background? The left dean nodded. Elder Su, don't worry. Before coming here, Xueqi Academy had already asked the Heaven Secret Sect to investigate this person. The Heaven Secret Sect has already investigated this person. There is no record of this person in any of the major transcendental forces. Even some of the super forces in other realms have no records of this person. Therefore, the Heaven Secret Sect has concluded that this person is an itinerant sword immortal with no background. Elder Su asked in a low voice. Did you investigate her background? The left dean shook his head. Not yet. However, Xueqi Academy has investigated. There is no such person in any of the transcendental forces. For a sword immortal to be so low-key, she must be an itinerant cultivator. She is alone and has no background. Elder Su nodded. That's for the best. Of course, even if she has some background, as long as it is not one of the top transcendental forces, we have nothing to fear. The left dean smiled. Don't worry. She is just a sword immortal. There is nothing to worry about. With that, he turned to look at the nearby Yi Xian. If she does not arrive in 15 minutes, I will skin you alive and hang your corpse in front of Xueqi Academy's main gate. Not only you, but everyone around you will also die. I want the world to know what happens to those who oppose Xueqi Academy. Yi Xian ignored the left dean. He only wanted to know why this sword immortal sister had not come out yet. At that moment, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Buy some time. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Senior, are you still considering whether or not to destroy the world? The mysterious woman said calmly. Do you think I can't do it? Yi Xian hurriedly said. Of course you can. With your strength, you can destroy the entire Azure world in the blink of an eye. Much less this Qingzhou. However, Xueqi Academy is too arrogant. They dare to look down on you. This is intolerable. The mysterious woman said calmly. Don't you know that experts only appear at the critical moment? The atmosphere is not good enough. If I appear now, it will be too embarrassing. Just wait. When the atmosphere is good enough, I will come out. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. The atmosphere is not good enough? Appearance depends on the atmosphere? Is she serious? At that moment, the left dean suddenly said, Yi Xian, 15 minutes are up. Since your master is not coming out, I will start with you. With that, he was about to make his move. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Wait. The left dean gazed at Yi Xian, didn't say anything, and waited silently for Yi Xian to continue. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then he walked over to the left dean and said, I know that I have no chance of survival this time, so I have a small request before I die. I hope you can fulfill it. I've heard that the left dean of the Central Divine Prefecture is a peerless expert. Today, I, Yi Xian, would like to seek guidance from you. Seek guidance. Everyone here was stunned. Seek guidance from the left dean? Has Yi Xian gone mad? Not to mention that Yi Xian was only at the Nether Passage realm. Even if he was at the Dharma realm, it would still be impossible for him to fight the left dean. Because the left dean's cultivation had clearly surpassed the Dharma control realm. After all, the main institute had once sent a Dharma control realm expert here. Unfortunately, that mysterious woman had killed him with a single swing of her sword. So, it was absolutely impossible for the Dharma control realm expert that Xueqi Academy's main institute had sent again. Yet now, Yi Xian had challenged the left dean who he didn't know his limits. Has he gone mad? The left dean glanced at Yi Xian and said, He wants to challenge me? Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded and said, Yes. The left dean nodded slightly and said, You, Yi Xian, are quite a figure amongst the younger generation. Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as he finished speaking, his aura suddenly dropped to the Dharma control realm in an instant. However, it didn't stop there and continued to drop. In next to no time, the left dean's aura dropped to the Dharma control realm under the gazes of countless people. At this moment, he couldn't go any lower. The left dean gazed at Yi Xian and said, The Dharma realm is my limit. Make your move. Yi Xian nodded, and then he charged at the left dean with his sword in hand. As he charged, the spirit grey sword in his hand trembled violently, and the aura of his sword skyrocketed madly. Borrowing the aura. Not only did he possess his own sword aura, but he could also borrow the aura of the earth, the surrounding wind, and any other aura that he could borrow. In addition to that, with his own battle intent and sword intent, the aura of his sword could be said to have completely exceeded the scope of the divine combination realm. When he used the life and death sword, the aura of his sword once again reached a new height. Strictly speaking, the life and death sword was not just a sword technique, but more of a belief in the sword Tao. The moment the sword was unleashed, countless people in the field turned to look. Even the left dean's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise and shock. This was because Yi Xian's sword had already reached the scope of the Dharma realm. And this sword could be said to be Yi Xian's strongest sword. He had really used all his strength in this sword. Facing an expert of the Left Dean's level, he knew very well that he only had one chance to unleash his sword. Therefore, he had to give it his all. The sword stopped a dozen or so inches away from the left courtyard envoy's face because a palm had blocked the sword. The Left Dean's palm blocked Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword could not move an inch further. At this moment, Yi Xian grasped the hilt of the sword with both hands and suddenly spun it. Bang! The Left Dean retreated a dozen steps, but only a dozen steps. Just as Yi Xian was about to attack again, the Left Dean's palm suddenly shook forward. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying. 100 feet away, a mountain wall shook violently and a black hole appeared in the mountain wall. This hole was more than a dozen feet deep, and at the bottom of the hole was Yi Xian. The Left Dean looked down at his palm. His palm had split open and blood was flowing out. After a slight groan, the Left Dean raised his head to look at Yi Xian who had already come out. He narrowed his eyes and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. You really have to die. In the distance, Yi Xian sat paralyzed on the ground. The spirit elegant sword in his hand was broken, and blood flowed continuously from the corner of his mouth. This time, not only was he seriously injured, but his sword was also destroyed. The destruction of his sword meant that he had no dantian. At this moment, he was even weaker than an ordinary martial artist. It was the first time in history that he had suffered such a serious injury. At this moment, he thought of many people. His sister, Shaowen, Mo Yun-chi, Bai Zhe, Ling Han, Yi Li, Jiang Zhou in the distance. The skinny old man behind the Left Dean suddenly said, "Kill him then go find his master." The Left Dean nodded and was about to attack when a woman in a plain dress suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The woman in the plain dress had her hands behind her back. She looked down at Yi Xian, who sat paralyzed on the ground. "Do you blame me?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't." The woman in the plain dress was about to speak, but at this moment, the Left Dean behind her suddenly said, "I thought you were going to be a coward and not come out." At this moment, the woman in the plain dress plucked out a strand of her hair. 10 feet away, the Left Dean's voice stopped abruptly because a strand of hair had already pierced through the space between his eyebrows. The woman in the plain dress turned to look at the Left Dean. "Did I allow you to speak?" Everyone. P.S. Last night, I dreamed that I earned tens of millions a year and went to Thailand and Singapore every day. Then, I updated every 3 days and lived a happy life. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.